A warm welcome to today's talk. My guest today is Will Tischler, who has secretly had a crazy effect on my life. He's someone who started in the pretty lowly position at this insurance kind of damage thing, reparation business, just kind of like knocking walls out of a building, and actually through self-development has managed to take himself up the food chain, and now he's a very well-respected person within this business, and he's kind of shooting to own the place. And so actually this conversation, we talk about all sorts of topics like that, as well as his work ethic, philosophy, and as always a ton of books. And this is a very well-read, very intelligent individual, and I really enjoyed having this conversation with him.
So we're homies, so it shouldn't be too hard. It's just like a normal conversation. I have a couple questions here that I want to cover with you.
All right, man.
But overall, pretty much just just a catch-up conversation. We could just be having that.
It's been a while, man.
Because our conversations do usually turn out to be pretty cool.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny, man. I was having a conversation with Leighton years ago now, but we had gone out to breakfast the one day, and I was telling him and this might be a symptom of how busy I am with work. I stay busy, right? So I don't always have the time that I would like to spend with certain people, right? And I just found, but what I found from that was positive for myself was I started evaluating my friendships and my relationships in such a way where if I can't have that kind of conversation with them, I'm really not interested in it. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's just, you get to a point in your life where it's just, you only have so much time, right? For me to reach the level of success that I'm hoping to attain, I have to put a lot of time into work. And then I also have a wife, obviously, other life responsibilities. So it's just when I do sit down with a buddy and I have that kind of get together, I want us to be able to talk about something that we can almost both kind of grow from a little bit in some way, shape,
something
or form.
That gets you going as well. So I did have on my list here a couple things in terms of Childish Gambino and drill rappers as well on the list, but that might not fit into that.
We can hit it all, man. We can hit it all.
That was also if you look at, I don't know, it's kind of there's friends you want to have these deep conversations with, which I like that we have kind of deep conversations, but then also you just want to fuck around sometimes,
Yeah, man, and I don't, by what I said previously, I don't mean to say that I don't want to fuck around either, right? What I want is variety, right? Yeah. What happens is, because in my experience anyways, because we form so many of our friendships and relationships out of proximity, you get into this spot with certain people where you're just always talking about the same thing, right? You pull up and it's like that scene in Anchorman where he says, "We've been coming to the same party for 20 years, and in no way is that depressing." You know what I mean? But it's just, to me, that is depressing. If I can't have some sort of growth along the way with you, that doesn't mean we can't talk about bullshit. I love to talk about bullshit, because if nothing else, it takes the stress off of certain other things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's just, I want to know that we can also go a little bit deep, and I want to know that we can pour into each other a little bit, you know what I mean? Because to me, it's just, you're not leveraging your time effectively if you can't do a little bit of that. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it is. It's not, doesn't mean I can't bullshit. I can definitely bullshit.
So there was so the way I want to go in the direction with the podcast in general, or what I talk about now, I've got super into philosophy recently. And actually I like that we're doing this, because me and you have just been reading nerds for a decade at this point, we've been recommending books to each other. And another interesting thing that I was thinking about when I was getting ready for this is that you actually were one of you're in the background of someone that I don't see too much, but there's also a very large amount of key things that I've done in my life that you've been integral part of, So for example, we started that hard realty together, before we knew anything about business. That was the first foray. And then as well, you wanted to go to entrepreneurship school, and you were the one that told me and Leighton about going to entrepreneurship school. And we're let's do it, the three of us, we'll do this, and then we'll be entrepreneurs. And then you dropped out.
Just dropped out. I think it was like the night before too, and I was just like,
hey, by the way, I know you're starting school.
You know what? I'm getting this paper, and it's just I can't.
Yeah.
But you guys have fun.
And that's fair.
Yeah.
You know, it's fair. But
you know what's funny about that though, and I might have told you this before, I might not have, I can't remember. But so my boss at the time, who's not currently my boss, but he was always like a mentor, and it's funny because you know, to this day, I would actually say he's one of my best friends. Like I see him quite frequently. We spend a lot of time together. We talk a lot. But anyway, he's always been a mentor essentially, and it was basically him where I just basically went to him and I said, Steve, look, man. This is what I'm trying to do. This is kind of what I think I want to do with this program. If you were in my shoes, like, would you go do this? And he laid it out for me a couple different ways, and basically, but it was basically at the end of the day, he just said, look, for what you're looking to do, I don't think a course like that is necessary, right? Basically, he said, I think you can learn that knowledge in other ways, right? And that was kind of, like the point where I said, you know, maybe it's not for me, even though I did hype you guys up to it.
God, we'll do this and we'll get in. But it's interesting too, because like although the course was what I would say a waste of time, and most post-secondary or even secondary education, I would say, is a waste of time.
Yeah.
I actually got one nice benefit of it being that like my teacher there was like, me and him kind of got along, and I met him for coffee after. And I should probably hit him up like again while I'm here.
Yeah.
But I was just talking like, I started this thing that I wasn't going to do. Like I had no intention of doing it before, because we went in like 2013 we went to school or something like that. 2013,
like that.
2014.
Yeah.
And then like I met him like I don't know when, like 2015 for just coffee, just to talk. And then he said like, oh, like I just did this project with Nelson Education, like the textbook company, and he's like, they needed a bunch of videos, so I wrote the scripts for them because I'm a professor, so maybe they would need your help, you know. And then then I just reached out, said, hey, I just spoke with Gord, blah blah blah, do you need stuff like this? And then like we did a couple small projects, and then they were actually the first company to give me like that was like my first big amount of money from like my own business, right? So like I closed the deal with them for like $11,000. And after that, I quit my job. Like, I guess this is the entrepreneurship aspect, because it's like, you know, it's like 11,000 isn't a lot to live off of, you know. But I was like, all right, I made $11,000. I'm quitting my job, and I'm moving to Thailand, you know. And so I managed to like after that, I just moved to Thailand, and I just did my work with them, and had a nice check for $11,000. And then I was like, all right, cool. And like since then, I've probably made, I want to say like 40,000 with that company. Yeah. So it was like, that I'm not sure how much the school was. Like I think it was only like $3,000 for the year or something like that. It wasn't too bad. Yeah. But yeah, definitely made back my investment in there. But like the actual course itself was quite shit.
Yeah, isn't that amazing, man? Because there's a couple things that I take away from that is number one, the value of relationships, like that, like there's nothing more valuable, I believe, than the relationships that we cultivate like over the course of our lifetime, whether it's the personal, you know, for personal reasons or for business reasons, shit like that. But relationships is number one, top of mind when it comes to success in anything, really. But then also it's just, and maybe this is a little bit more on the philosophical side of things, but yeah, you take this thing, you know, like it was a 1-year program, right?
1-year program.
You know, you take something like that, or in some cases people do 3-4 years, and like, the thing itself is kind of like bullshit, but from it comes like this one seed that, if, you know, cultivated, could blow up, right? And it's just, I find that pretty amazing how, you know, it's almost like there's almost like a spiritual aspect to that, where it's like you're in the place that you need to be, and it might not feel like it on the day-to-day. Like, this is kind of like a slight edge principle, right? You're going to the class every day, doing your thing every day, and it doesn't feel like you're really attaining anything. Like, it feels like, you said, like a bullshit course, maybe waste of time, maybe, you know. But you meet a few good people, and then just from that, just this one little seed, you know, blossoms into something that you might not have attained that. In fact, I would argue you probably wouldn't have attained that, you know, without taking that course. So what I'm trying to say is, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's like I wouldn't have, but it's kind of like, yeah, you just, one of the philosophies that people have on like business is like you just do outreach, you know, you just reach out to people, and then something, you know, you kind of feel weird.
Yeah.
I feel weird reaching out to people, like hey,
cold calling.
Yeah,
basically,
like cold calling, sending messages, you know, and people send like hundreds or thousands of messages per day to like strangers, you know.
Well, you were doing that on LinkedIn, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so you do this, and you don't think it's going to work out, and then eventually, like every once in a while, you meet, like just through the act of doing the thing, you get to where you want to be. So, for example, with this, like another big client of mine, like one of my main clients, I got her in 2016. I paid to join this mentorship course after I graduated this thing. Yeah. So I joined this course named now it's called Business Mentor Insiders, and it's like hands down the best like business course that I've ever read, or ever joined. But I joined this thing, and then it just said like send out this many proposals on Upwork per day, you know, and then you just kind of you just shut the fuck up and you just do what you're supposed to do. And I did that. I applied to all these jobs, and I met this girl who was in Mississauga or something like that, and I had this job, and I closed a deal for a couple videos for like $3,500 with her, and I was like, nice, like this is like I had momentum going, so it started with that, and then she introduced me to this other woman, and then that woman introduced me to another woman, and that's how I got like that's how I started working with ExxonMobil, BMO, TD Bank, like all of those like clients that I now have are just from like this one connection. Crazy. That made no, like you wouldn't have guessed it, and it just came from me just like sending out proposals every day, you know.
That's beautiful. It's just the consistency, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the consistency, and the interesting thing about it, and I have fallen into this a lot on my business journey, is you forget that that's how you got there, right? So like there's this like chart I've seen. It's like your results like go like this, and like the actions to get the results, or like your memory of the actions, it goes down. Right. And then so you just forget what you did to get there to begin with.
So when you find yourself in that position where, okay, maybe you've forgotten, you know, what got you this far, are you cognizant, or like are you aware of what you think is fueling your success at that time? Like I think you know what I mean, but what I mean is just like, what is the notion in your mind, excuse me, because we both know that it's the consistency that gets it done. Mm-hmm. But when you forget that, what do you think it is?
Yeah, you forget. You forget that, and then I guess you just. I'm trying to think, because like I have numerous times in my career thus far where I just stopped doing all lead gen, and then 2021 was one of those times. Like I did nothing for a full year, pretty much, and it's like, you just kind of. I don't even know what you think it is. It's like maybe you think you need to focus on some other funnel or something like that. Okay. You just pretty much try to find a shortcut.
So I get what I was kind of trying to get at the question, and I guess your answer pretty much is no. But I guess, like, is it ever a situation where the ego gets into play and you're just like, I'm just the shit, and that's why this is working out?
I mean, that is as well where
like
where you go, you know, because you do. I don't think it's a battle. I think it's a good thing. Like like something my boy Fergal talks about. And he said this recently while we were in Mexico, and I was like, it really stuck with me. So he made a lot of money really young because he got really good at SEO. Mm-hmm. And he was SEO, like search engine optimization. So he was like one of the best in the world at it, because he got in real early. So when we were fucking around with like real estate as 20-year-olds, he was like doing the internet shit, which people like he got in where we should have got in, you know? Right. And so he made just tons of cash, tons and tons of cash. And now he just turned 30, and he's retired. So he's chilling. But he said that he was talking with his therapist, and the therapist was like, so like, did you think you maybe the money, do you think you didn't deserve it, because it seemed to have come really easy for him, you know? And he's like, I deserved every fucking penny. and the therapist was like, oh, like normally people don't think like that. They feel like kind of weird that they got something that they didn't deserve. And so there is a part of like that I think that I'm the shit that is worth you know, like you want to have that thought, you know,
Yeah.
like, and that was kind of my, like, once I got back on my actual business the last couple months, it was sort of like when we do our monthly goals talk, it's like on it, I just put like $10,000. I want to make $10,000 this month. And then I just like, you know, like a normal, like what's a stretch goal or whatever, like, or a SMART goal. Yeah. They're like, what's your SMART goal? What's your plan? It's like, no plan. It's just going to happen. And then it actually did happen for like 3 months in a row. And I was like, we back, baby. So there is that aspect of it where it's kind of like, oh, like,
you need some of that to be successful. There's no question about it, man. Because at the end of the day, excuse me, you know, at the end of the day, and I look at it, even though what I do, even though what I do is drastically different than what you do, you know, I've taken a very traditional route, but I've applied entrepreneurial what's the word,
tendencies.
I've applied entrepreneurial tendencies and mindset and practices to a very traditional career. Where was I going with that? We were talking about how you need some of that, like, so the transition that I made in my career, like going from the labor side to being a project manager, responsible for making sales and maintaining relationships. That's not a transition that most people in my line of work make. Like, that's not, like, it's very rare that somebody would make that jump, just because the skill sets are so different, right?
Yeah. Would you say you kind of went from the proletariat to the bourgeoisie, kind of?
Yeah.
Is that kind of like the equivalent jump that you did?
Yeah, a little bit, I guess you could say. You know, to be honest, like you might have to familiarize me with those terms, because I know they come from 1984. So
no. Well, it's just a communism thing. So pretty much like communism was like the proletariat is the labor force.
Yeah.
And then the bourgeoisie is the holders of wealth or whatever who like don't do any work, which is complete bullshit. But like they are framed as like the bourgeoisie need to be overthrown, and then you give the means of production to the proletariat.
Yeah.
So it just kind of seems like like
the only thing with me is there for what I do, like there'd have to be like a level between those two, because I'm still not the boss, I'm still not the owner, right? Like, I still am an employee, but that being said, you know, I've gone from a position of only making money off of literally the labor that I can put in. Like, okay, you know, I'm gonna work a 40-hour week. If I put in some extra overtime, I make more money, right? Where now I make money off of commission and profitability and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely a shift closer, I guess you could say, to the bourgeoisie. But at the end of the day, it's almost some level in between those, just because I'm still not the owner, right? You know what I mean? I still have a boss. I still have, but it's an interesting position where you can deploy entrepreneurial tactics without the financial risk, which is a pretty interesting place to be in. You know what I mean? It provides more job security, but it also allows me to scratch that itch, because without being able to scratch that itch, there's no way I could have done the labor thing forever. It just wasn't. It's just not in my makeup to do that, right? Like, and so this provides an interesting opportunity where I kind of jockey between the two without having to put up all the financial risk and some of the headaches that come with ownership. Yeah, for sure. Doesn't mean I don't still strive for ownership, but
and there's so many different ways you can actually do it. So one of the things that I've noticed and that we talk about a lot is that pretty much a lot of the business, you know, like you go from high school, they tell you go to university, get a job out of university that'll be respectable, then like buy a house, get some kids, you know? Yeah. Then I broke out of that and I started my own business, and then like my thought was like, you need to be an entrepreneur, you can't let anyone tell you what to do, blah blah blah, and that shapes my personality. And it was interesting because that group think of like you need to be your own boss and you need to make a shit ton of money. That was kind of like the Gary Vee type of thing.
Yeah.
Gary Vee, like all these, like, I don't know, like 2017, 2018, that was like the thing to do, you know? And it was like, if you got a job, you're a loser. Now I'm thinking about it, it's like, that's actually completely wrong, and there's nothing even wrong with having a job at all. But then I thought it was interesting because, like, when you started this and you decided, like, hey, I'm not entrepreneurial, I'm an intrapreneur, like, I have entrepreneurial tendencies, but I actually am happy where I am. And I
for
thought,
now anyway.
I thought that was actually a pretty interesting thing, because, like, there was so much, like, societalism, like groupthink of like this new, like, I mean, you're fucking listening to E.T., you're listening to Gary Vee, you're listening to all these people who are telling you, like, go start a business.
Don't do
you know?
what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And you had like the forethought to be like, actually, no, I'm not. I'm probably capable of starting a business, but I'm going to like shuck that fact, and I'm actually just going to focus on, like, I'm just going to have a job, and that's fine.
Well, what it is it's critical thinking, right? At the end of the day, that's all it is, right? You're taking the aspects of the message from those types of people that you mentioned, and you're tailoring it to your situation, but you're not losing sight of your goals, your levels of comfortability, you know, the things that you need to feel good on a day-to-day basis, right? Like the thing is, you know, you made a good point where you said, I forget exactly how you said it just now, but you know, you made a good point when you said basically, you know, that what they're saying is you know, not always the case. It's not always correct. I would submit that what they're doing in some ways is dangerous. Not that they shouldn't do it, but I'm not going to tell Gary Vee not to do what Gary Vee does, because it's an incredible service. But it's dangerous in the sense that because we as humans, and when I say we, I'm not necessarily talking about you and I, but I'm talking about, like, generally speaking, society. Like, we, without that ability to critically think, you internalize these messages, right? And not everybody can be an entrepreneur. It's that simple, right? Like, we both know the stats. Like, the vast majority of them fail, right? Like, and there's nothing wrong with failure, but you're giving people this message, and they're not doing what I'm doing. They're not separating, you know, what works for them and what doesn't work for them. They're just internalizing it. And then, I shouldn't say this is actually happening. It's more like this, there's the potential for this to happen, because I don't really know what the people who listen to Gary Vee are doing, right? They could be home, I don't know, right? Like, you know.
What's that?
Yeah. They might not be doing anything with that information, right? But I think if you take in that information without a critical thinking lens, you know, you're putting yourself in a position where you might just not be able to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
And there's a lot of people who can't be an entrepreneur.
And there's also the fact you could potentially make more money than a lot of the entrepreneurs do. You know, so you know, it's like, what's the point of being an entrepreneur? It's like freedom, like financial freedom, you get all this stuff, but it's like, what's the cost, and what do you actually want to do, you know? So like, like an example, I actually spent like $20,000 this last year on coaching, and just to get that like anxiety program up and running. And all my coaches told me, like, here's what you need to do, because I originally had like a video program of it, and then I wanted to transition that video program. Pretty much I wanted to just sell the video program, and everyone told me it wouldn't work. Don't do it. You can't make money with like a video program for like $50. Like, it's just like the cost of customer acquisition is too much. You need like a higher paid service.
Right.
And so I was like, all right, like, I ignored that for a bit, and then eventually I succumbed to the fact that I do need to like actually become a coach on my own. I need to like a coach / therapist type thing. And then I started reaching out to people, trying to offer them like my services as like someone who could help them like get to like overcome anxiety and like build their confidence, things like that. And I was struggling to sell this shit, you know, I was struggling to do it. And then I realized that, like, wait, I have like this money making video marketing agency, and this is just like a realization in the last like month and a half, 2 months after spending like a full year doing this. I realized, like, wait, I just like abandoned this thing that makes me 6 figures per year,
Like you're talking about Between the Lines.
Yeah. My animation company, I just pretty much abandoned it to work on this other thing.
Right.
And then I was like, wait, like, do I need to make, like, can't I just have a hobby? Like, is the money that important to me? So then I
know in the past it has been.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that something that's changed, or?
Well, I mean, it's kind of like, it's still important, but, like, I don't need anything. Like, what do I buy?
Right.
What do we buy?
Yeah.
And, like, I think a lot of it was just, like, you just need to get, like, higher and higher and higher. But, like, I calculated in May, and I calculated this, like, 7 years ago, how much money do I need per month to be happy?
Yeah.
Like, including, like, everything that I would want to buy, I need to make $14,000 net profit per month, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know, why am I trying to, like, because it depends on what your purpose in life is. Like, is my purpose in life to make animated videos for, like, pharmaceutical companies?
Right.
Probably not. You know,
Yeah.
what do I want to actually spend my time doing? Not that. And then if I have to, in order to get to $50,000 per month, $100,000 per month, I have to do more of that, and then it's taking me away from what do I want to be doing, which could be potentially just like, I love chatting with my friends, and then now we're kind of recording it because that's a fun, then it's just like kind of lives forever as well, which is a nice, you know, then it's like, what did I spend my life doing? It's like having conversations, it's like, where are those now, you know? And I was like, oh, maybe I should just like do something like this, and then I don't need to make any money with it, I don't need anyone to watch it, it's just something to do, you know? And then I just have my money coming in from this thing, and then like we don't have to, you know, you don't have to like put all your effort and your energy into making cash.
That's right.
And I think that was like one of the main group thinks that a lot of like the business community had was, you just need to make
as
a
much
shit
money
ton
as
of
well.
money.
Yeah. I've heard a bunch of different people say that too over the years, that like we all, in terms of the happiness level, once you've reached that threshold where you have what you need, beyond that, more money is not making you happier.
Yeah, exactly.
At least anything that I've seen, just people's opinions on that, they all say that, right? I also don't have, you know, multi-million dollars to say, you know, like I don't, I guess what I'm saying is I don't know the other side of the coin, right? But some of the happiest or some of the most miserable people I've ever met in my life are like former bosses who, as far as I could tell, at least financially, had the world by the balls, right? And they didn't seem very happy to me, dude. Maybe there was another side that I wasn't seeing. That's always possible.
Well, a lot of it as well is like people who want to make all that money, they're trying to cover up some other thing that they haven't, you know, it's like you need therapy, not more money. You need to go see someone and deal with it, you know?
Yeah.
So that could be why they don't seem pleasant people to hang around with. Like if you feel like you're not enough, then maybe you try to fuck like 1,000 girls, maybe you try to make millions of dollars, but like it's all just, I don't know, it's like a weird meta way of, you go beyond societal thing. Like you could have just became a doctor, but you're like, no, fuck that, I'm gonna become like a millionaire. And it's like, I'm not gonna do what they say so they respect me, I'm gonna do this other thing and then make it even hurt further so they have to respect me,
right?
You know? And it's like a meta form of like, it's just like this weird, it's just not healthy as well, you know?
No, for sure, man. No, it's and I mean, I'm not, you know, I've got my own ways of obviously being unhealthy myself, so I try not to, you know, I try not to be too judgmental towards other people as far as what I think is healthy versus what's not, just because I'm big on looking in the mirror, right? So I'm kind of like, you know, if somebody's sitting there, it's like that old thing, I don't do it anymore, but I used to do the chewing tobacco, right? And I always found it hilarious when all the smokers at work would tell me how bad the chewing tobacco was. That was hilarious to me. That was like the funniest thing. It was like, you motherfuckers are smoking a pack a day. Like, you can't tell me what's unhealthy, right? Like, it's not, you know, so it's almost as though, so when it comes to other people and what's healthy versus what's not, I always kind of take like a self-accountability position where it's like, I'm also not the healthiest, so you know, I don't always know what's best for people, if it's best for them to make more money, but from what I've seen and just my experience in my own life, like, I'm making more than enough just to do what I got to do on a day-to-day basis, and I'm pretty damn content with that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, could I make more? Yeah, definitely. But like you said, what would be the cost to that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And would that be a cost that I'm willing to make, right? And those things change too, right? Like those are moving targets. Like there's today, that's the interesting thing about life and about growth is like, I say all this today, but am I going to feel that way in a decade? I don't know, right? You know, life changes, things change, but I think overall it's just, I don't typically think that more money is the answer once you reach that threshold of having what you need.
Yeah, and it is a certain aspect where it's like for some people that's 100% the thing, and even some people it's worth it to go become a billionaire. It's like in their purpose as a human being, you know. There's just like no one size fits all, and that's kind of the problem. And that's also the tough part, because like in terms of societal, like how do we structure a society? Do we just tell people like they're gonna have to go find their purpose, blah blah blah? It's like fuck, like that's a mess. Like, how do you deal with shit like that, you know?
And that's a mess, man, because, and again, I can only speak from my experience, but, like, to me, it's kind of two different questions. Like, if you were to ask me, am I happy and content in life? Absolutely, 100%. If you were to ask me if I found my purpose, I don't think so, man. You know what I mean? I'm just being real about it. Like, I haven't spent enough time, to be honest, really thinking about it, right? I've kind of found a way to be happy in lieu of that. Almost, you know what I mean? And that's not necessarily, and that's where I guess that's where the personal growth comes in, and that's where I get a little bit excited about the future, because I know that there's still a possibility for me to figure that out and do it, right? Like I don't, as well as, you know, things are going right now, I don't ever think like this is it. You know what I mean? I really don't. Like it's, you know, I know I'm not going to have this job forever. You know, whether that means that I make the shift into the ownership of the company that I work for, or whether I go a different route completely, I don't know. But I have this very strong feeling that like this is not what I'm gonna necessarily be doing for my entire life, or I should say it's not all that I'm gonna do for my entire life, right? Like, but it's just, I couldn't tell you I know what my purpose is. I have no fucking idea, man. You know, I really don't. And I think about it honestly, to be honest with you, I think about it like a decent amount of time. Like I feel like I ponder that more than the average person, but I still have no fucking idea.
I'm right there with you, bro. I'm right there with you.
It's good to know that I'm not alone in that, man, because I do put a decent amount of thought into that, and it hasn't come to me. It really hasn't. Like I'm sure it will, but it hasn't yet.
So I write in journals a lot, right? And so yesterday I was actually I was reading all my previous ones, so like I have only from like the beginning of 2019, so I have like 3 years of journaling that haven't been lost to time. And I noticed like every month there's like, this is the purpose, you know, like I found my purpose, you know. And like at the end of 2020 or something like that, I was like, my purpose is to do e-com. And I was like, I'm gonna put all my effort and energy into e-com now. And I set that, you know, I was just like, when you read the course of 3 years in an afternoon, you're like, how fucking dumb was this guy? Like, he just keeps wanting this to be his purpose. Like he doesn't know what his purpose is, and he keeps saying this is the purpose, you know. It
almost feels like you're forcing it.
Exactly, it's like I'm forcing the purpose, you know. And then like I think there's a couple things I was thinking about. It's like your purpose or your priorities aren't what you say they are. It's where you actually spend your time. So like, what do you spend your time doing? Then you look back, it's like, what was the meaning of my life? Like, I could probably comfortably say it's talking shit with my friends. Like, that's probably what my purpose was, you know? Right. And then, because that's what I spend most of my time doing. Like, all my spare time, like, when we're eating dinner, we're talking shit. When we're fucking, like, hanging out on break from work, talking shit. When we're supposed to be working, we're also talking shit. Like, we're just talking shit, you know, just joking around. And also having, like, philosophical talks. Like, this one, you know? It's like...
That's true, man, because I do that at work, too, even though, I talk a lot of shit at work.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, if you're sitting there, like, I don't know, for me, it's sort of... Would I say, like, my purpose was to chat shit with my friends, you know, and just like have a good time.
It almost sounds silly. It almost sounds like that can't be a purpose.
But it's like, I mean, that's what I seem to spend most of my time doing. Like, is my purpose. You know, like I had a other thing that I stumbled upon. I was like talking to my dad about anxiety, and I was like, my purpose is I have to figure out my anxiety, and then I need to help everyone else overcome theirs. And I was like, is that your purpose though? Like, you want to help in the degree that you can,
right?
But yeah,
in the degree that you can, right? Fuck
yeah, but it's like, is that your purpose? I'm like,
I don't know.
You know, and then yeah, like with other people's purpose, it's like I gotta make money so that I can like retire my mom, and it's like, it sounds noble, but like, is that your purpose? Like, my mom does, like, what's she gonna do when she's retired? Like, probably not much. Like, she doesn't have like a life that she wants to escape from. Like, she likes her job. She, like, if you retire her, she's gonna be bored probably.
Yeah, and there's also an aspect to that, man. And I don't know, maybe this sounds cold, maybe this is you know, maybe I'm a dick for thinking this way, but I also think to a certain degree, why is it my responsibility to retire her? You know what I mean? I mean, everybody's different, right? And like you said, it's very noble to think that way. But I just, and you know what? Honestly, at one point, I might have thought that way a little bit, but I don't know, man. The older I get, the more I look at people's situations, and I say, like, we have to accountable to our own shit. You know what I mean? And it's like, you know, I've had a relationship with my father over the years where at certain times, not so much these days, like things are a lot better these days, but I've had situations where I really had to help him out financially. And like, on one hand, I was happy to do that. On one hand, there was like this little bit of pride where it was like, I can do this. Like, you know, I've put myself in a position where I can do this, and there's some pride that comes with that. But then at the same time, it's like, this motherfucker's supposed to raise me. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, he ain't do his job.
and that's not meant to be disrespectful to my father by any means, because he taught me so many things that I use to this day that nobody else was ever able to teach me. It wasn't financial stuff, right? Like,
so one of the things I also want to talk to you about is philosophy. Like, you got into Stoicism for a period as well with your boy.
And I gotta say, I gotta credit you for that for the most part, man. It was something, you know, Stoicism was something where, like, it's funny because it was one of those things where when I started reading it, I was like, oh, I've known about this my whole life. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know why or how. I've just always, like, had some degree of stoicism. Like, I'm not Marcus Aurelius, but I've always had, like, some degree of stoicism. I've always been, like, unbothered by a lot of exterior factors that I have no control over. So amazing, like, incredibly, a lot of that just came very naturally to me. But no, I do have to credit you for you know, at least like, actually picking up the books and reading them and stuff like that, and seeing what some of those guys had to say. I love it. I love it.
It's an interesting thing too, because I was looking. Meditations by Marcus Aurelius is my favorite book.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
hands down. You know, hands down.
Yeah.
And The Alchemist. You haven't got the.
I have.
You did it?
Yeah. I've read The Alchemist a couple times. I got the audiobook. I've done it a couple times. Okay. Yeah, I love The Alchemist.
I love The Alchemist.
Yeah.
I love The Alchemist.
Yeah, man. You know, it was honestly the first time I read it. And I don't know. I'm not always the best at. I'm not always the best at reading something fictional and pulling out the meaning. You know, sometimes I have trouble with that. You know, I do much better sometimes with, you know, the more step-by-step type books that we also read. But no, The Alchemist is it's honestly, it's one of those ones where I feel like you have to sit with it a lot, and you have to read it a few times for it to really, really take hold on your life. I think, at least in my experience. Like, maybe other people pick it up quicker. I don't know, but it's just I was blown away the first time I read it just by it's majestic. You know what I mean? Like, there's something to it. It's just, it's a different world, and it's a different. But as I've read it more a couple more times, I now start to piece together some of the more real life
Yeah, I guess that's one of the things as well. Like, we try to find it, like, it's not given to you. You know, the lessons in there aren't given to you. Like, oh, what's the step-by-step? And that was actually one of the complaints that people have with the E-Myth, is it's like, it's just a story. And it's like, well, I mean, that's how you fucking remember it. Like, what's the other ones, like, that are like the E-Myth? Like,
that's right.
Like, Built to Sell, things like that.
Yeah.
Where they're just like, here's step-by-step what to do. I don't remember any of that shit, because like, story is how we remember stuff.
100%.
And even though it's not given to you in a step-by-step, like, hey, like, find what your personal legend is, move towards it, have faith that, like, the universe is conspiring to help you achieve all this stuff. It's like, it's not given to you in like a step-by-step format, and you do actually have to like piece it together yourself. But then you'll find things in your life and you're like, that's an omen.
That's an omen. Yeah. And since reading that book, I have come across things like that in my life that I might not have otherwise recognized, maybe. You know, and I have to imagine that The Alchemist is at least a very big part of that, for sure.
Yeah, I'd say it's like, I would say that's in my top 3 books. I don't know what the third one is, but Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and Alchemist
I've never really done a top 3. My top 3 might, because I go a little bit, I'm a little bit more partial to the a little bit more hardcore shit, like, so, like, Relentless is definitely in my top 3.
Yeah, I saw that upstairs.
Yeah, I'm reading it for about the 50th time. Like, it's just, Relentless is definitely up there, and honestly, now that it's out, Winning is up there too. But I almost have to do like a top 3 of different kinds, like, because it's just so it's, and hip hop's the same way. Like, it's just, I'm such a diverse reader that. Probably not as diverse as some, but I'm diverse in the sense that I'm not just reading How to Win Friends and Influence People, or I'm not just reading Think and Grow Rich. Like, I'm reading something like that's a little bit more spiritual, and then I'm going and I'm listening to Tim Grover tell me to forget about all that shit. You know what I mean? Like, and I like to read the different. I like the different perspectives, because I like we were saying with Gary Vee and me not internalizing some of that message. I do the same thing with reading, right? Because like Meditations is not a good example of this, because that was just his personal journal, essentially. But there's so many of these books that we read where, like, as good as the book is, there's still some bullshit in there. There's still something where it's either just put in there to sell the book, or it's put in there to, it's their perspective, and you could tell that maybe they're a little bit out of touch on certain things here and there. It's just, you can always find some bullshit if you really look for it, right? So that being the case, I like to read many different things and just kind of extract the value as much as I can from each thing, right?
What value are you getting from that Hitler book right now?
I'm not really far enough in, like, right now. Like, it's just talking about his early life.
Oh, you're still there.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, his dad should have let him be an artist. I mean, I really wish his dad let him be an artist, but unfortunately, I just haven't delved deep enough into it yet. I could tell, though, it's one of those ones where you could tell right away sometimes that something's just gonna be like an epic read or listen, like I'm doing the audiobook, obviously, but I don't know if I could read that from start to finish. I don't know.
I don't even know how big that book would be. That's got to be a big book. Because it's like a 50-hour audiobook or something,
it's got to be fucking thick. It's funny, too, because I actually didn't... I was at Brandy's work the other day, and I saw it on the shelf, but I just saw the cover. I didn't think to, like, flip it to the side and see how thick that thing was. But it was pretty big. Like, in terms of, like, the square footage of the cover, right? So, there's a lot of words on each page, right? So, I don't know if I can read that, but it's, as soon as I read or listened to the foreword, I could just tell, like, oh, this is going to be one of those ones.
It's
like,
one of those ones.
And I'm trying to think of, like, what other books like fit into that category.
Did you read that Winston Churchill one that I have in my I find that's actually the same. I actually prefer the Third Reich book all in all to the Churchill one. The Churchill one's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy that guy's life. But yeah, also
Well, at the end of the day, I think with the Churchill thing, as amazing and as interesting as it is, it's just one guy's life, right? Where when you read or listen to something like The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, like you're talking about, obviously a huge amount of it is about Hitler, but you're also talking about the implications of that on the entire world for a significant period of time.
Yeah, and like when they cover D-Day in that one, they're like, here's how D-Day went, blah, blah, blah. Whereas in the Winston Churchill book, which, I mean, this is fair, but they're just like, here's what Churchill was doing on the day of D-Day, you know? Which is fair, because it's like, well, if I want to see what happened on D-Day, I can watch Saving Private Ryan or any of the other, like, 100,000.
It's funny that your go-to was, like, a Hollywood movie.
No, fuck documentaries. Like, if I want to know.
Give me Tom Hanks. I want to know what Tom Hanks has to say about D-Day.
That movie was so good, though, bro. Like, I haven't watched it in so long, but
when he shoots him through the scope.
Yeah, fantastic
cinematography, man. Like it was definitely an excellent movie.
I probably haven't watched that movie for over like 10 years, but like as a kid, that was like one of my childhood movies, you know. I have a couple like Terminator 2, like when I was in like single digits of age. And then when Saving Private Ryan came out, I remember being really young, but like I wasn't allowed to go see it in the theater. But when it came out on like that DVD, or not DVD, like the fucking VHS, like that four VHS or 2 VHS or whatever. When I saw that, I was like, I just watched that constantly, you know.
The first time I saw Saving Private Ryan was in school, which is a little bit fucked up that they would show that to the kids, but
different times back then.
Yeah, different times, and it was a history class. Like it wasn't like it wasn't like it was a biology class, and the guy was just like, here, we're gonna watch this fucking epic movie. But it was a history movie, and you'd be hard pressed to find a history war movie that doesn't have violence in it. Like you can't really, those don't really exist. So, but yeah, it's kind of fucked up that the first time I saw it was in school, but it's fucking great movie though. Great movie. Who else was in that? I can't think right.
Bro, everyone had Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel
Was in that. They got fucking Matt Damon in there.
Yeah. Oh shit, man. I forgot. For some reason I like only recalled Tom Hanks. Like,
interesting too, because like Vin Diesel dies because like the one girl looks like his like niece or whatever, and he's like carrying her back. He's like, we gotta take her with us, Cap, you know. And he's like, no, like he looks like my niece. And it's like, there's all those memes about Vin Diesel and family, and it's like, like even in like 1996 or whatever, he's like dying over family back in the day too.
That's funny. Yeah, man. Yeah, it's funny. It was an amazing movie, but yeah, I don't remember too much of it, to be honest. I'd have to rewatch it. Yeah. I know it's an incredible movie. Like I remember watching it and thinking it was fantastic, but it was so long ago that I watched it.
Yeah, I got to rewatch it as well. But yeah, the like Rise and Fall of the Third Reich thing, it's an interesting thing about how they talk about Hitler. You know, like the actual setup for the whole thing is just, it's a very different look at Hitler versus what you usually get of like this one-dimensional villain.
Yeah, that's typically what happens, I find, when you read something like that. And I also tell people that's why it's so important to read shit like that, is because like that should be, and this is why history is so important, that should be a cautionary tale. Like we shouldn't just be looking at Hitler like, oh, you know, he was this huge like one-off and he was evil. Like he was all those things, but he you know,
he was also a signal of the times that he lived in. Like he didn't just pop up with zero. Everyone's like, yo, what's this crazy guy talking about? Right. You know, it's like, no, he was very touched into the or not even like the societal zeitgeist.
Well, one of the parts, even though I'm still pretty early in the book, one of the things that immediately struck me was in the very beginning, the author said that like basically at 16, like he had his political outlook. Boom. So as this guy, now I'm not at the part of the book yet where he's coming to power, but if that's the case, if this motherfucker is 16 years old and he's basically got his political philosophy set in stone more or less, then I could imagine that his rise would have been full of evidence of what could be coming.
Bro, he wrote Mein Kampf in like 1923 in jail.
Okay.
Writing down step by step his plan. He gave this book to every single person in Germany when he came to power in the 30s, and it was like required reading for most people, you know? It's like he wrote down exactly what he was going to do.
And then you watch, and then and then you listen to the media tell it.
We didn't see it coming.
If only we could have been better prepared.
Even in the book, he's like, so where does Hitler go from here? It's like, well, if you look at chapter 8 of Mein Kampf, like he actually explains exactly his next step once he captures Austria, where he's going, and it's like, oh,
that's funny, man. Yeah, I mean, it's not obviously it's not funny. It's sad, but like there is an aspect. You know what? There's an aspect to that though, where it's like, how fucking stupid are we, dude?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really? Like, you know, I don't know, man. Like we get, like, human beings have, like, are often heralded as, like, you know, the most intelligent species and all that, you know, and before us it was, you know, species that didn't know what the fuck they were doing and were just Neanderthals and all that kind of shit, and I get that, but it's like, but at the same time, it's like, when you're presented with this type of information, or, you know, fast forward to today when you have all of these historical precedents that you can just go back and look at, and then you can, there's certain things that happen in our society today where you can see the blueprints for this in a historical perspective. Yeah. If you go back and you do a little bit of reading or research, right? So yeah, it's interesting to me how we seem to be we just seem to be fated to just constantly repeat these things, man. Oh man, people are really wild out here. Like, it's yeah, I don't know. To me the problem is, like, when you have those types of conversations, like when you dare to draw parallels between Nazi Germany and COVID or whatever the case may be, whatever you're drawing a comparison between, the problem is a lot of times the conversation, because people are so emotionally tied to, like, basically the end result, like what Hitler did on a in the general scope, right? Like, people can't, like you were saying, people can't separate, like, they can't take the Holocaust out of it and look at the steps, right? Mm-hmm. And because you can't look at the steps, people can't see the similarities.
Yeah, they're not like, are there currently concentration camps with people getting gas? Yeah. And it's like, well, like, most people didn't know about those either.
And it's right. Well, that's a point in and of itself. But it's just, to me, it sucks because the inability to do that is what precludes us from having any type of real conversation about these things, right? Because at the end of the day, if I'm gonna show you some parallels, but all you can do is, like, we're not saying it's a shot for shot the same thing, right? Nobody's saying that, right? And that's not how history works, right? Like, when these things happen over time, it's just similarities. It's never like the exact identical. So just, like, miss me with that, oh, they didn't do this, like, well, that's only a very small aspect of what we're talking about. That's only a very small part of the philosophy that went into that, right? But you do have to be cognizant of the similarities, man, because at the end of the day, Holocaust or no Holocaust, Nazi Germany was about creating an environment of groupthink and,
like, hypnosis, or?
Yeah, not conforming. Okay, right. Yeah. Like, it was about creating, like, this enormous system of conformity and groupthink, is as far as I can tell, right? Like that. And because when you're able to do that with any group of people, you're able to have power, right? Like if I can control what people think and then I can have power over those people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So to me, like, of course the Holocaust was disgusting, but I worry about people only looking at that part of it.
Yeah,
right?
like they're not
because
looking
that's
at
the sensationalist part.
Yeah,
right?
like I would say it's like they're not looking at the dangers of where it can lead when you take one group of people in society and you paint them as like a germ carrying monster that is like going to damage like the rest of your society, you know?
Yeah.
Like racism was also that as well too,
Yeah.
you know? It's like the black people are dirty, blah blah blah, this and it's
Yeah.
like that's why we can't do this. And as well, like Hitler was actually following the science at the time, you know, like the science said like, hey, like,
well, as was Churchill when he said what he said about other races, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
All these guys are following.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying
that's one of the things as well, trying to cancel people over the course of like you're trying to cancel Churchill now based on what he said in the 1930s, and it's like, well, he was actually following the science. It's like, bro, there's a lot of shit that we're saying right now that is pretty fucking dumb that they're gonna say like, oh, that was like wrong, but why didn't you know that? You know, it's like, why didn't he follow the science of and the societal norms of 80 years in the future? Because he wouldn't fucking like, no, he didn't even speak the same language pretty much.
You know what, I really like excuse me, I really like bristle at that whole notion of like cancel culture. Like, not to say that it doesn't exist. I know it exists, and I know there's people that are working hard to cancel certain voices. To me, that is like the ultimate show of like human arrogance. Like, that I can cancel you because you don't think what I think. Mm-hmm. Like, and unfortunately, those people have been very successful when it comes to some people, and who they've chosen to cancel or whatever the case may be. But I just find that I find that so funny. Like the idea of I'm gonna cancel Churchill, like. That sentence to me is ridiculous.
Yeah, and like forget about the fact that the only reason you are not a Nazi right now is because of this fucking guy. Like that's it. Like
he's the
like,
one.
You know,
man.
like it's hard to give one person credit for so much stuff, but like literally the only reason that we are not Nazis right now can be put on that fucking one guy who like paid a very dear price in order to have his beliefs. Like he got pretty much kicked out of his career for the 10 years leading up to World War II. You know, like. He didn't have access to his political thing because he got kicked out because he kept talking shit on Hitler.
That's
you
right.
know? And then when they couldn't ignore this fucking guy anymore, they're like, all right, like who's going to be president? And they're like, could it be all these soft guys who just tried to make like accept Hitler the whole time, like who tried to surrender to Hitler before the war even started? And they're like, we'll put fucking Churchill in there, you know?
Yeah.
And he's like, you know, there's even one of the conversations that he had with one of the people that he worked with, and they're explaining like what happens in 2 months, and he's like, we're both going to be dead. Like, like, what do you mean what happens in 2 months? Like, he was fully ready to just get killed for, like, he's like, no, I'm not surrendering.
Yeah.
And we're gonna die.
Yeah.
Here.
Yeah.
And it's like, he was completely willing to do that. And he just like, it was just like a kind of a matter of fact thing. He's like, no, we're gonna be dead. And it's like the reason that we are not currently Nazis and why the 1,000-year Reich lasted 15 years or however long, a large part has to be attributed to him because they had won all of Europe. They had taken all of Europe by that time, you know.
Yeah.
By the time they tried to do the thing, then they couldn't get England for the reason of like they're not very good at naval warfare is like their weakest point.
Yeah.
Like is Germany's weakest point pretty much.
Yeah. So man, it's like, yeah, and you know, honestly, like, I've just found myself like over time, I'm less and less willing to even have these conversations. Like I'll have them with you or like with certain buddies of mine, but just with like the day-to-day people that you come into contact and people voice their opinions, and I just more and more I'm just less willing to even tell people what I think about all this shit, just because it's gone so far it's gone so far left with a lot of these opinions that we're forming, and we've it just, at this point, it seems like it almost seems like an unwinnable battle. Like, it really does. Like, the pendulum has swung so far to the left where people are just, they seem to just care about shit that, as far as I can tell, doesn't fucking matter. It doesn't. You know what I mean? And it's just, and maybe, maybe there's a little bit of privilege in that perspective. Like, maybe, I'm sure people are dealing with things that I don't have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And I don't take that for granted. Like, when I come into the contact with those people, I'm always open to hear. Like, I'm always willing.
That's one of the things, is like trying not to judge other people. If you run into some like super extreme feminist who hates you just because you were born a man, but they don't even believe that men exist. But it's kind of like, it takes a lot to not get triggered by that. But like to actually be like, all right, like, this person has their own view of things, and they want the world to be as good as it could be, but they're just going around it in their own way,
This is just the way I am as a person, but I even take that a step further. Like, when I encounter that person, I want to know why you think that way. I think it's fascinating, because if nothing else, I might honestly, like, I might learn something I didn't know, right? Like, we do have this arrogance sometimes as people who are a little bit more knowledgeable than certain people. Like, I do a lot more reading, I do a lot more researching. I'm, like, without sounding like arrogant about it, I'm just more intelligent than a lot of people are, because of the work that I put in. Not because I was like born with it. Like, I put work into this shit. Like, I purposely read information that is gonna feed my intelligence and feed my ability to relate to people in the world. So because I have that mindset, I also remain open to the fact that, okay, I've read a lot and I've learned a lot, but I haven't learned it all. Right? And when I do encounter somebody maybe with a little bit more of a radical outlook than that, I'm not gonna just write it off as bullshit, because I think that that's equally damaging to what we're seeing happen on a large scale. I think that that's also equally damaging, and I believe that is what has allowed this global thing to occur. Right? Like, this whole thing, whether you want to talk about Black Lives Matter and some of the more what's the word? Some of the more ridiculous things when it comes to that. Like, to me, a lot of that is a response to certain groups of people not being heard over time, right? Because it has a compounding effect, right? When anybody, whether it's women or black people or whatever group it is at that time, that kind of comes to the forefront of the consciousness, like, when you write those people off for so long, this is what you're gonna get, right? Like, people are gonna, so I try to not be that way. Like, I want to try my best to, as much as I possibly can, understand where everybody's coming from, right? I'm never gonna fully understand it, because we've got our own lived experiences, right? And I just don't have to worry about some of the stuff that other people have to worry about.
But yeah, I guess it's like, on that end, it's like, I just finished this book recently called Madness of Crowds, which you definitely gotta dip into.
I've heard of that.
Dip into my Audible and grab that. Okay. That's a fantastic one.
Okay.
But Douglas Murray wrote this, and he's kind of like, there's a thing there where they say you could never understand, and then you also have to understand exactly what we're going through, and it's like, there's just so much like, there's so many jumps of logic going on with this thing, and like he has it broken up into like the gay rights movement, the feminist movement, the race movement, and then trans movement, and he has it like, he pretty much tackles all of these things, and he's just like, this makes no fucking sense. Like, this makes no fucking sense. He's like, for like gay people, it's like, it's kind of like they're fighting for gay rights, proper everything, blah blah blah, all this stuff, but then they also have like this super sexualized section of their gay pride thing, and they're like, no, that's part of it. And it's like, yeah, but like, if Martin Luther King, his movement also had a fetish section, like, it would be easier to like discount it, and like, a lot of these movements, they've already won, or they're not asking the right questions, And then it's just like he really goes into detail about how crazy that it really is, because he's talking about like the anger that like trans people feel with being like pushed aside for this and this and this, and then it's like but like what are you actually fighting for? And then there's certain things they're not even fighting for, like intersex, like people who are born with both things, like they put that aside and they went straight for the hardest thing to justify, and like they're justifying like Fallon Fox, this person who grew up, spent his entire life as a man, had a kid, was in the army, then transitioned, and then joined MMA and started beating the fuck out of girls, you know, like and then
I'd never heard of that.
And they're like justifying that, and they like go straight from that instead of like wait, why don't we figure out the answer of like the intersex situation with like people who like legitimately are born with like two things, you know, and like figuring that out, or then they like try to figure out like gender as a social construct, and like they're trying to convince like a penis isn't real, you know, like they're like so they're kind of like trying to convince society of like a different thing. And he talks about a lot of stuff like that, and he's gay as well. So he has like a little pass because he's like, bro, at least I'm gay. So but he's like talking shit on the gay movement first, and he's like, bro, it makes no sense with like because everyone would agree, like most people would agree for like women equal rights, like you shouldn't be fucking harassed, raped, you know, like all of this stuff, you know. It's like then it's like, what are you actually fighting for? And it's kind of like, and he does make a nice comparison as well. I think it was like King David or something like that. He slays this dragon and he gets all this props for slaying this dragon, but then how is he going to keep the props going? So then he like keeps like fighting smaller and smaller dragons, and it's like, well, have we reached the point with like male female equality? Like, have we got there? If not, what is there to do? You know, like what is there left to do? But then it just turns into this big like scream fest where neither side is like, I've thought this like gender pronoun thing was pretty kind of ridiculous, you know. And there's been a lot of times where I'm like, this makes no fucking sense, you know. And they're trying to change like, so I live in Mexico, as we know, but they're trying to change the language so that like you can't say Latino or Latina, is Latinx, Latinx or something like that, right?
I've heard of that. And
like, so I'm just sitting there, and like me and my girl, we just sit there like amigue, you know, because it's like there's amigo, amiga, and now like the way to do it, like the gender neutral, is amigue, and it's like it's like amigue, but the actual way of like all of the Latinos that I know, they don't give a fuck about this, you know. It's like a bunch of people from like, I don't know, like going back to skin in the game, it's a bunch of people with no skin in the game in this thing. Like, why are they fighting for this when like the Latinos don't have any, like the actual people who you're trying to like help out, you know. There's a meme, it's like, I tried to teach my Latina friends or like my Mexican friends that it's amigue or now, and they just keep pronouncing it, they're trying, but they keep saying pendejo, you know, which is like, you dumb fuck. And like that's kind of how they think about it. But then on the other side of it as well, it's like if you have a group of people, it's all fucking girls, you know, then like you pronounce it in like the female, like this is a group of girls, you know, like aegis, you would say like aegis están haciendo, like they are doing something, you know, but you say like ellas, like ella is a girl. But if there's one man in a group of a million women, it's ellos. It's like now it's a masculine, male, you know, and it's like that doesn't really make any sense. So there is some stuff in there when you think about it. You're like, you know, like I can't completely discount this. There is like, even though like I laugh about it, and I'm sitting there like, hola amigues, what's going on? You know, like I'm joking about it, but it's like, like there could be something there. But we need to figure out what it is. And I don't think a bunch of like white people from California or like Seattle are the people to figure it out, who are completely out of touch with it. So
and that's why that's another reason why I try not to talk about this stuff too much. Is at the end of the day, I do honestly want to be an ally to people who need one. I do. I'm what I consider like I am the furthest thing from like a nationalist. I think nationalism personally, in my Constitution. I think nationalism is the dumbest thing. I'm what you would call basically like a global citizen. Like I don't believe that there's any difference in any rights, no matter who it is. Like, I want to see everybody treated fairly. So I definitely always want to be an ally to anybody who actually needs one. But I try not to put myself on the forefront too often, because what I've noticed from stepping back and just observing it kind of from a distance a little bit is sometimes it almost feels like you can't really help. Like it feels like no matter what you say or do, there's going to be a significant portion of that group of people or the force behind that group of people that is not going to agree with what you have to say. And I don't see anything productive in these that's ultimately what it comes down to, is I don't see anything productive in most of these conversations. And a good reason for that is probably what you kind of alluded to, is some of these battles have already been mostly won. For at least for the most part. I'm not saying we can't still pick up some more little wins here and there, but in terms of the big, battles, they've been won. Right. So it's tough, man. It really is. And honestly, it doesn't help that I'm a white man, right? Like, so it's just, there's just so many of these conversations where it's just like, I struggle with it because on one hand, like I said, I do want to be that ally, but on the other hand, is this even my conversation to have? Like, does my voice belong in this conversation, right? And again, because I, at least most of the time, do not carry myself like with any type of arrogance or something like that, I'm more than willing to agree, or I'm more than willing to concede that, look, I can't bring anything to this. Like, I'm not the guy, right? Like, so, but it's tough, man.
Well, you could probably bring a lot. Like, you're well read. You've got like I think one of the main things is like understanding history, which you do. I think that's an important.
I think an understanding of history is important, and then just I just think open-mindedness is probably the other one that I kind of have in spades that can be helpful, because it's just so many people. Like, as what happens too is because we have such a volatile political climate, is a lot of these issues that aren't political issues get made into political issues. And then as soon as that happens, people seem to lose the ability to be open-minded about it. Because as soon as something becomes political, well, now I'm a Democrat, or now I'm a Republican, or I'm a liberal, or I'm a conservative, whatever the case may be. And it almost seems as though people's affiliations start to play more of a role than they should, right? When at the end of the day, a lot of the things we're talking about are just human issues, like human, whatever you want to call them, human rights issues. Just, we're talking about the way that we relate to each other. That's what we're talking about, and that's never a political issue, right? Like a political issue is what we're gonna do with this infrastructure money that we have coming in. You know what I mean? Like, are we gonna build bridges and roads, or those are political issues, because you're talking about how to allocate resources within a community or a country or whatever the case may be, and you're discussing it with the constituents. But I've never seen these things as political issues, and as soon as they become politicized, I just find the polarization is guaranteed.
That's the brutal part of all this. Like since Trump came, it's just enemies. Like, everything he does, awful, unless you're with him, and then anything he does is like, fuck yeah. That's right. It's weird. And then I don't know, I feel like we're starting to get out of it a little bit in the last month. Like, I've seen like these left-leaning news things that are just fucking propaganda machines, and they should probably go to jail, the people in charge of them, for misinformation. Like, I've seen them actually start to succumb a little bit lately, and then I feel like with Joe Biden where he is, people do seem to, they're like, he's not all there. Like, he says some pretty dumb shit, and like he should, like my grandfather died at 86. That's like 7 years younger than Joe Biden, and he was like an old man when he died. You know, it's like, bro, like my grandfather couldn't really walk too far. You know, like me, and like he wasn't able to walk too much, and we were just kind of like, he was just getting breakfast, getting lunch, walking around, hanging out. You know, he didn't really have anything going.
Meanwhile, this guy's president.
Yeah, this guy's like running the biggest nation on earth. It's like, bro, you're not doing a good job with it. And like people, even the people who can see it, they're like, all right, like we gotta do something here, you know? But like the actual, like the politicization of like this whole pandemic has been mayhem, you know? Because it's like you can't even have like a conversation, you know? And there's this dude, Robert Malone, who was on the Joe Rogan podcast like recently. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to watch it, but he's pretty much saying like, hey, like here's the situation with the vaccine, like I invented part of this mRNA vaccine, like that was my job. And then he's been banned off Twitter, he's been banned off everything, and it's like, bro, like he, like you know, it's like when you're saying like, oh, like the experts have determined this is false, you know, it's like a good thing that Joe Rogan moved to Spotify, because like you can actually have this conversation, because like the clips that people take and put on YouTube, they're gone. Like my buddy sent me a couple, and I was like, oh, Robert Malone's on here, and like now like 2 days later they're gone, and it's like this goes against our community guidelines, and it's like, bro, you need to be able to have like you need to be able to have a conversation with this guy and then put him against Fauci and like have them discuss it as adults, you know? You can't just like silence one thing, and that's actually one thing you're going to find in the Hitler book is like the one thing, like the way that war started was pure misinformation, and they said like the Polish people attacked our German facility in Poland. That
I remember from school. Like I even remember them talking about that in school. But and
they're like, okay, we got to go fuck up Poland now to defend Germany, and it's like Germany did that, you know? Germany was at fault for this, you know? And it's like if you're limiting the amount of information that people are going to get, they're going to believe some dumb shit, you know? Like my father, for example, sorry to talk shit on him, but like me and him got in an argument the other day because I was like, my mom made me an appointment for like my second Pfizer vaccine or whatever, and I got my Moderna for the first one.
Right.
And so I was like, okay, like let me just look up a little bit to figure out
if that's an issue.
If the mixing them is an issue. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. Like you're only getting it, like you don't give a fuck about this, so like you just get whatever you can get. And I'm like, well, there's also health shit that I have to worry about as well too. Like I mean, like bro, like there's a reason like Moderna is banned in a lot of European countries for people under the age of 40. Like these aren't just like a thing you just give and there's no cost to doing them, you know? Right. He's like, no, like I had my work had these people come in, and like it was a doctor, and he explained, he said just whatever vaccine is available, you get that one. And I was like, should I get the AstraZeneca one? Oh, I can't because it got taken off the market because it's causing blood clots. It's like, bro, like there's some shit, like they're not going to tell you, like, they tell you just take whatever one, but I mean, there is some health things that I want to keep in mind, you know? And like, if I'm being forced to fucking take this shot, which I wasn't I'm only against it because they like demonize people who don't have it, and it's like, well, like
just the practicality of not having it is not very good. You know?
And exactly.
At least here, I don't know about Mexico.
No, Mexico is fine. Like they don't give a fuck about anything in Mexico. So like the only reason I got it was because I can't leave. So I'm currently a prisoner in Canada until I get this thing. You know. But I also think they kind of work too. You know, they do something, even though like they do something in terms of removing the whatever, but the symptoms of it. They don't stop you from getting it, even though they initially said that it did. But then they've like had to go back on that without saying we were wrong. They just said the new variant makes it like, you know, it's like no. But the thing I'm trying to get at there is like my dad, when we were explaining it, I was like, oh, there is actually some stuff that like I need to look at. He's like, no, a real doctor came into my work and said to get whatever thing was available, right? And I was like, who do you think I'm listening to? He's like, it's not some fucks on the internet. And it's like, well, I'm not listening to fucks on the internet. Like, I'm listening to real doctors, and this motherfucker listens to CNN all the time too. Like, I walk by, and me and him got in like a bit of an argument about this, because like I walked by and CNN was talking about like there's going to be so many cases, which is true, and this is going to be the most deaths in all the pandemic with Omicron, and like no one has died from Omicron. It's like, you know, and so it's like, speaking of misinformation, like why is this allowed on TV? Like I can show you, like I could show him with data that this is a lie.
Yeah.
But he doesn't want to see it.
Doesn't want to see it.
And it's
no.
like, what do you mean? Like, I'm listening to fucking crackheads on the fucking internet. It's like, bro, this TV is poison.
Yeah.
And it's telling you, it's like trying to keep you afraid.
Malcolm X told us that the media and the television was and the newspapers, this is not new, man. It really isn't. Like, we're not talking about a conspiracy theory here, right? Like, there are verifiable things that have been proved once documents come out and stuff like that. Like, there are verifiable things that were once said to have been something that they weren't. Like, for instance, like the Gulf of Tonkin incident, which was one of the incidents that brought the United States into the First World War, because Second World War was Pearl Harbor, right? But, like, there were documents that came out and said this shit didn't happen, right? Like, it did not happen.
There's something like that as well with Vietnam, too. Like, the factor. I'm not sure what the name of it is, but, like...
Well, speaking of books, like, you've thrown out a couple of recommendations. Like, one that I recommend to people is War is a Racket by the gentleman's name is Smedley Butler. At one time, I mean, this is going back a long time ago, but at one time he was like the most decorated general in the United States, military. And so he worked with everybody. He worked with bankers on Wall Street. And literally the entire book. And man, like, you could read it in an evening. It's basically a pamphlet. It's not even a book. But the entire thing is him telling us that war is literally a way for people to make money, and that's it. Yeah. Like, it's a total racket. Like, and now I'm not smart enough to say anything like in addition to that, but I look at the source of where it's coming from. This guy knows a thing or two, right? We seem to have a tendency, and again, when I say we, I don't mean you and I, but we seem to have a tendency where somebody's only an expert if what they're saying aligns with our beliefs. If somebody with all the same credentials, all the same background that could provide trustworthy knowledge, but if they're saying something that doesn't align with our beliefs, then we don't see them as an expert. And that just doesn't work for me anyways.
There's actually speaking of that Robert Malone podcast, like, I went on Reddit to see what people were saying about it, because it's like a heated one, you know? And the one guy's like, these fucks, like, he says he doesn't have a financial interest. He sells his consults for $90, so he's charging people $90 to get the thing.
That's not what we mean when we say financial interest.
And it's like, when you think about the $100 billion that pharmaceutical company made, like, do you really think they don't have a financial interest in telling you that everything's all good, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not even saying what it is, but it's like, fuck, bro, like, how fucking stupid. Like
somebody making a living is not a financial interest.
Exactly. Like these people, like lobbying, where the FDA, over 40% of their funding comes from the pharmaceutical industry. They have lobbyers in politics. It's like they have a very fat financial interest as well, with like Pfizer being a sponsor of CNN. It's like they are controlling the news narrative. It's like, bro, like, that is a financial interest, you know? Like, that is a massive fucking conflict of interest, financial interest. And it's like, this dude selling consults.
That's not... It's hilarious that they even...
And it's just like, to not recognize that, you know? I'm not even saying like he should... like, that's okay that he has a financial interest. I'm saying he probably should, like, hey, like, here's what I do that is where I'm good. Disclose it. But I'm just saying, like, bro, like, that's not the financial interest that we're fucking, like, worried about, bro. Like, there's much bigger financial interests at stake here.
That's funny, man. Whether we like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. You know? And I've always known that I wanted to get into politics. Well, not always, like, over the last, like...
I don't think I ever really knew that about you, to be honest, until recently. Like,
yeah, so, like, I had, like, a kind of thing where I was like, maybe I'll look into politics a little bit further, you know? And
what's the drive behind that?
Pretty much it was like, what are my skill sets? And where would they be best used?
Yeah.
And it was kind of like...
I could see that,
and it was kind of like public speaking.
Yeah.
Coming up with ideas, not actually doing any work. Like, I was like, I'm built for politics, you know? I'm built for this shit. So yeah, like,
awesome.
so I've known for a little bit that was kind of what I wanted to do. And I just always, like, I remember watching Black Panther in 2018.
No, I never saw that.
No?
No.
That's a fucking Will.
I'm not
that's
much
a
of
Will
a movie
Tischler
guy,
movie,
yeah,
bro.
I know people say that a lot. I'll see it. Don't get me wrong, but
you should watch
I'm the worst when it comes to movies, man. I'm the absolute worst. I haven't seen anything that normal people go and see.
That's where actually now that my boy Fergal and Andoni are in Mexico, we watch a lot of movies, and I have a little document in my computer of movies that we're going to watch, and it's like we just like slowly get through them all, and it's been lovely, because it's interesting to watch a movie with your boys and then just discuss it afterwards and just get to talk about it, and sometimes it's not even a movie. Like sometimes we'll watch one update in my life that you may not know is I started a philosophy club.
I thought I saw something about that, like whether you posted about it or something, but it was minor though. I didn't really like take it in. Like, so you've actually started a club?
Yeah, so I started a club.
Nice.
And it was interesting because it was like the first one. I did the first one like right before I came back to Canada, and I wasn't planning on coming back to Canada, right? So I was planning on spending Christmas in Mexico. But I did my first one, and like my business coach said, like, just host your first meetup, and I was like, all right, I'll host my first meetup, and I was like, okay, and then I started getting nervous of it. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what? This is going to be horrible. Like, what am I going to talk about? Like, I'm going to host a philosophy meetup. Like, what the fuck are we going to talk about?
Yeah.
And then like I held it, and about like 40 minutes in, I was like, I just felt the air, and I was like, this is fucking incredible. Like, this is one of the most incredible things that I've done, because it was like I just like kind of put out like, hey, let's have this conversation, about philosophy, and like 10 people showed up, and a lot of them were actually my buddies, and they showed up just to like support me to do it. So like 4 of them were just like my friends, but then it turned out into be like a super deep conversation. The way it like went together was like just fantastic, right? And we just had a great time, and at the end we were supposed to talk for an hour and a half. We talked for like 3-4 hours, something like that, and it just kept going. Long story short, I have no idea why I told you that and like what we were talking about.
It's an update, man. It's just your life. It's exciting, man. Like that's cool, man. Like, to be able, I respect that, because to be able to take something that you're just interested in. Like, fuck, I have many interests, but I'm not making meetings on them, you know what I mean? So it's an accomplishment to be able to even go do that, right? Like to, you obviously decided at some point that was something you wanted to do, and you executed on it, and and not only that, but it wasn't a flop either, right? So,
and that was a surprising thing, and I was like, fuck, like, let me see what I can do with this thing, and it wasn't even like, that was one of the things with my business purchases last year, was all these coaches were telling me like, you have to make money with it, and I was like, wait, I think I'm better, like I don't want to see someone in need who needs help, and you're like, all right, do you have $2,500 to get this help? And so my thought on the thing was, all right, I've learned a bunch of shit just through like a life of action and like self-education, so I could probably help out with whatever someone's going through. Let me start a club. Didn't know what to do, so I was like, we'll just base it in philosophy, and then we'll just see where it goes, but like with the main thing being like, I want to hear your main issue that everyone's struggling with, and let's figure out if we can fix this together, right? And it just went fantastic. It went better than all of my hopes, and then so I've been thinking about like, damn, like how to keep this going for longer. And then it's also like, it really helps too, because speaking of Stoicism, like in 2016 I went on like a bike ride across Europe, and actually I went on a bike ride across Netherlands, more succinctly, but like I noticed in my notes that I had taken, because I had no phone, I had no money, I had no anything, I just had a bike. I noticed, because I was just there with my thoughts for like days and days and days, and my notes were pretty much 3 things. It was like, study Stoicism every single day, make Stoicism a part of your life, and don't judge other people was another thing. It's like, we're all here in this together. That was like one of the other lessons. And then the third one was just like, stop getting so drunk, like, and that was,
so that's before I
was on the liquor at this point. And I was like in Amsterdam getting fucked up, like by myself, and then like
by yourself, that's another level,
I mean like getting fucked up by myself at the hostel, and then like meeting people at the hostel, and we all went out together, but like I wasn't there like with Brad, and we're all
see, that's a different level, man. I mean, you can always meet people in that certain environment, obviously, but yeah, I don't know if I could do that, like just go off without someone from my crew or something. You know what I mean? Like that'd be yeah,
but the thing about it is, so like I had these notes that I rewatched after like 4 years, 5 years or whatever, and then I was like, oh, like if I have like a philosophy club, then I'm kind of forced into at least like brushing up on like one aspect of this so that I can like bring something to these meetings, you know?
There you go.
And so it's actually been like selfishly a good reason to like a functional way that I've been able to actually like be better.
Well, and I mean, let's be honest, man. How many times are we honestly gonna do things that only benefit others and don't benefit us? Like, we're not, in order for us to stay like engaged in any sort of way, there's got to be some sort of benefit to us. You know what I mean? Like, people, you know, you look at all these great philanthropists. I'm not trying to be cynical or anything like that. It's just the reality. Like, they're also doing that for what it does for them. Like, being charitable brings an enormous amount of satisfaction to yourself, right? Like, it's not just, you know, now granted, like, you're getting that satisfaction because you're being unselfish, but we also do it for that feeling, or maybe for the tax.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing in Islam. My buddy was just explaining this to me, is like there's a thing where you give, like, it's like if you give a certain amount, you get rewarded in the afterlife, right?
Yeah, so then it's like tithing.
People, and I don't know what it's called.
In Christianity, anyways,
okay.
It's tithing.
But yeah, like these people give a certain amount, and then they also get benefits from taxes. They also get benefits from, like, they go to heaven, like they get a better spot in heaven or whatever it is. Like, I'm probably butchering the thing, so sorry, Islam, if I'm fucking that up. But yeah, it's like
I'm familiar with the concept through Christianity.
It doesn't really matter if it's like altruistic, like if you're actually just giving because of no reason, or you're giving because you just want to give, you know? It's like
it's the same result.
Or like you're giving because you're getting benefits as well from it, right?
Yeah. It's so I mean, you know, like I said, I'm not trying to be cynical about it, but it's just the reality. I think that's just human nature. Like, how often are we going to do something that is 100% altruistic? Now, I mean, you know, people can do things that are like 75% altruistic, like and you know, but there's always got to be, I think, some sort of benefit to us, just if nothing else, just to keep us engaged, like to keep us coming back, right? Like, you might make a one-time donation that's 100% altruistic or something, but to continuously, you know, because there's people out there who will give up, like, you know, let's say 5% of their annual income, or sometimes more, will go to charity, right? So to do it like that, you know, there's got to be some sort of benefit as well. Like, why am I going to give up, you know, let's say 10% of my income?
Even if it's just so that, like, when, like, they give, like, a big thank you at the end to you specifically, or, like, when you go to, like, their meetups, it's like, hey, like, this is our, like, a very helpful person for us, you know? So it's
that's
like,
right. Yeah, there's always some little bit of, you know, like I said, I'm not saying that's the reason they do it, but I'm just saying, you know, it can't be 100% altruistic.
Yeah, it's kind of like, all right, if they decided that it's going to help other people to, like, I'm trying to think, like, say you, like, they break your arm, and then people call you a bitch, you know? It's like, how often are people going to, like, you know, like, something that wouldn't make you feel good at all. Like, if you give money, like, in exchange, you get fucked up for it, you know? It's like, how many people are still going to do it?
That's
you know?
right. Yeah.
Probably not a lot.
Yeah.
You might go through it if there's a tax benefit, but it's like, bro, this is brutal that I have to do this.
Well, even if you don't get, you know, quote unquote fucked up from it, like, even if it's just a matter of the only result for me is a lighter bank account, like, that's not, you know, that's not. I want to get something out of this deal. I'm not saying that I need to get more than the people I'm giving to, but I gotta get something. And, you know, it's just, so anytime I see, like, you know, big time philanthropy pushes, you know, I do admire it, like, because let's be honest, that's still a noble thing to do with your money regardless, right? Like,
and it's a net benefit no matter where it comes from.
Yeah, and you're still helping people. Like, you could hoard that money, or you could pass it down to your, you know, entitled children, and they could squander it. So either way, it's a good thing that you're doing, right? But it's just, yeah, I always have that little bit of like, how much altruism is there, and how much, you know, it's not a judgment thing. It's just something that I always am aware of, right? It's like, I think there's very little real 100% altruism in the world, right? Like, you know, we got to get something out of the deal just to keep us engaged and keep us wanting to do it.
Have you read Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins?
No.
He talks about like these bats. And they like pretty much just like, if they get blood or whatever, they share it with their group.
Right.
But because they know that if they don't get blood the one day, and then other people do, like, they're getting blood shared with them. So it's like,
gotcha.
It's like this weird cycle thing, and it's like, hey, like, there's no rule that says you have to share your like kill or blood or whatever it is. Say that it's like, get blood from like an animal or whatever, and they bring it back. There's no rule that says you have to share it with people, but if you don't, and you don't have blood that day, and you don't have a history of sharing, they're not going to share it with you.
Right.
So then that's kind of the thing. It's like, it's sort of like, it's a weird thing talking about like altruism, stuff like that. It's like we grew up in these societies, and we're kind of like made to help each other, and helping each other helps us, and kind of like all this thing. So it's like sort of like, what do you?
Well, it just goes back to like communal living, right? Basically, you know, which is like heavy in our history, like as a people, right? Like, you know, that's basically how we evolved, right? So yeah, it's interesting, but I'm not the type to just give it all the way up, like, oh, what a good person. Like, you know, I'm a little more cynical, where it's like, let me see what are the benefits.
Like the people on social media who are like giving money to like homeless people, and like they're filming it the whole time. Like,
just
giving
like,
some $100 to this guy here. It's like, bro, like he's hungry, you know, like, give this fucking guy a
just
break.
Give the guy a break, right? Like, you know, where I've done little, you know, I've never consistently given to any like charity or anything like that, but I've always tried to do like little things. Like, for example, this is years ago now, you know, I pulled up to the bank in the morning. I just wanted to withdraw some cash, and there was like a homeless man like sleeping in the bank, right? Which is common, right? Because the banks are always partially open. So, you know, anybody who's homeless and it's cold in the winter, they can go in there and get warm, right? You know, and I went in, and there was this guy, like homeless guy, sleeping there, and there was this other woman in there, and she was being just like a real bitch about the fact that this guy was in there. He wasn't causing anybody any harm. He was in there, he was sleeping, he smelled a little bit. That was it. He wasn't trying to steal money from us, nothing, right? Just trying to get a good, you know, warm night's sleep, right? But this lady was being like a right bitch, and she you know, just, oh, you know, they shouldn't let him in there, and, you know, oh, he smells terrible, like acting like it's some massive inconvenience in her life that this guy who doesn't have a roof over his head is sleeping in the bank that you stopped in at for 2 minutes, right? So I like intentionally, like basically in front of her, like took money out and gave it to the guy, right? Like, it was just like a 20 or something, but I was like, here you go, man, you know, get something to eat, whatever. Like, and there was an aspect of charitability to that, but there was also like, I kind of wanted to stick it to this bitch and be like, come on, man, like, there's people in the world that are, you know, not as they're not as in as good of a place as you and I are, right?
Yeah, and on top of that, it's like, if you had his life, maybe you would be in that similar situation, you know? It's like...
Yeah, because when it comes to the banks, like I said, that's really the best opportunity for those guys to get some shelter where they can be a little bit warm. Fuck, you know, I was never homeless, but like when I was a kid, and you know, my parents a lot of times couldn't afford to have a vehicle, but I played sports, so my dad and I would take the city city bus to like all my sports games. Fuck, we'd be in the dead of winter and we'd stand in the banks while we're waiting for the bus, right? For that exact same reason. We just, luckily it was just a shorter stay. You know, we didn't have to spend the night there, you know, but we did the exact same thing. We went in there to get out of the elements, right? To stay warm. So, you know, it's just, I kind of forget why I said that, why I brought that story. Oh, just because, like, when it comes to me and whatever charity I've done, it's always been, like, just little things like that. Like, or I'll, you know, I just see some, what I like to do, I like to be spontaneous about it. Like, I like to be, you know, you see somebody that you could tell could use a little money, but, like, maybe they're not out actually, like, panhandling or anything like that, and then you just like slip them a little 20 and just be like, here you go, man. You know, I just like doing stuff like that. But at the end of the day,
then you also got to be careful on that. Is like, is that even, that person might not even be struggling, and they're, you know, and they're just like kind of a slob, and you're like, why this motherfucker?
yeah.
It's like, is this person saying I look homeless? Like, I got a job, I got a wife, I got kids. Like,
no, it's never been like that though. It's only in situations where they're very obviously but yeah, I mean, that's pretty funny though. Offend the guy.
Yeah. It's like, what? I actually did that. I went and bought a bunch of gift cards at one point, and I was handing them out to homeless people that I would see in Hamilton.
Nice.
And I went over like across the street to go see this one dude who's just like KO'd, like not KO'd, but he's just like sitting against like this wall thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, here you go, you want this? And he's like, no, get the fuck away from me. And I was like, what? He's like, you don't want this like gift card I got? You know? He's like, get the fuck away from me. And I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, all right, bro. And I was like, okay. Like, damn, that's probably gonna make me want to give out less of these now. And it's unfortunate because it's like, damn, like some people who would have accepted it, now they don't get these because I'm like, oh, like I guess not everyone wants the help, you know,
the charity or whatever. And
which is fair enough, you know. Like if I'm struggling, I want to get on my own feet. It's like, like I don't need you to fucking like.
Yeah. There's pride involved, right?
Exactly.
You know, Fuck, man.
So it is what it is. Anyway, changing gears, I got two other things here that I wanted to talk about. That, what is it? Three things, actually. Second order consequences. Do you know anything about those?
Very little, but like give me an example or like.
Okay. So there's two examples, and this goes back in the COVID mix. So there's second order consequences of things, and so one of the ones is when Britain was they were going into India. They had to deal with the fact that there was like these crazy like rattlesnakes or cobra problem. I forget what it is, like some sort of thing. And so they're like, fuck, like these are deadly, we don't want these. And then so they ended up, they're like, all right, here's a plan. We are going to do a thing where like we're gonna buy, like if you kill a cobra and bring it in, we're gonna give you money for that.
Yes. Yep.
And so then they started doing these aspects of it where they were just like, it was kind of like a buyback program, like a gun buyback program, right? They're like, all right, like you bring cobras here, we're gonna give you cash. And so like the people would go and kill cobras and bring them in. And then eventually that was good, but then like they started killing too many cobras, and they're like, well, now our money's drying up. Yeah. So then the second order consequences of that is they started doing cobra farms where they were like farming these cobras, and then they would kill them and then bring them into the government to get some money. Yeah. And then once they realized that, they're like, okay, let's close that down. We're not going to do the gun buyback thing. Like, that doesn't work. So we're closing it down. And then, like, the people just had these useless cobras, so they just, like, fucking dump them in the wild. And then the second order consequence is because they wanted to eradicate cobras, they got twice the amount of cobras in their society, you know? Yeah. And so the one thing that I wanted to talk about there that it's pretty much like a conversation with myself that I thought that was interesting.
I'm just here to listen to you execute on this one man conversation. Go for it, buddy.
Now my turn to talk more. The curfew that they implemented, because they just implemented a thing in Montreal, which I think is really funny about this whole thing. So they implemented a curfew, and they used to have
they did that before, didn't they?
Yeah. So they used to have a thing in Montreal where like you could take your dog out, but now they like took away that curfew aspect, or the dog aspect of the curfew. So it's like after a certain point, you're not even allowed to walk your dog on the street. Geez. You know. Yeah. So and it's funny because Montreal has also passed a thing where it says like, because they're so short on healthcare workers, because they fired all the unvaccinated ones. That if you are COVID positive, you can go in and work with people. So it's because like the unvaccinated COVID negative people can't go deal with patients, but like the vaccinated but COVID positive ones can. But one of the second order consequences that I was laughing about was they implemented this curfew in Merida as well. Well, not Merida, it's like this other, it's in Yucatan, in this other state of Mexico that that we're in. And so they implemented a curfew, and like all the clubs are open and everything. So we were at the club. We're at the club, and then at 10 p.m. the club's closed.
Right.
And then like mandatory like 11 p.m. you got to be inside.
Right.
And so the second order consequence I saw of this is like all the clubs in Mexico, all the bars, they're pretty much like kind of outdoor-ish kind of things. Like they like there's no walls. There's just like a roof, and that's it, you know?
Right.
Ton of airflow, in other words, you know?
Yeah.
But what they did, the second order consequence of the curfew is they're like, hey, like, so we have curfew, so what we do is we take all these people from this party and we bring them to a house, and then we have to stay here until 6 a.m. So it's like if you want to keep partying till like 12 or 1, which like a normal person will want to do, it's like now you have to party in a contained area until 6 a.m. You know, so like you're in this room which has like way worse ventilation, way higher, like you're around a lot more, like you're just tight in with a lot more people.
Right.
And is because like, yeah, that's the second order consequence of fucking like your curfew that you put in place. It's like you actually get worse outcomes because of that, you know?
So whose idea, like, how did the house thing come about though?
So like, the house thing comes about because people like partying. They're at the club, hanging out. They're at a bar, hanging out, and it's like, oh, it's 10 p.m. The bars are closing. Are we ready to stop partying?
Oh, sorry. Okay, I thought you were saying. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were saying there was like this designated spot.
No.
Where you're just saying people go and still party.
Yeah, it's the consequence of like you enforcing your curfew is actually like you're enforcing
putting
a curfew
people in a more dangerous position.
You're enforcing a curfew to make sure these numbers don't go up.
Yeah.
But then the second order consequences of that is that they're now in like a way worse area, and your numbers are going to go up further. You know, so like your second order consequences of that is like a shittier situation. Yeah,
so they're going from an environment where the transmission is far less likely, you know, to now it's much more likely. Yeah, that's, you know, I just finished up Ray Dalio's first book, Principles, and actually that was something that he was not COVID specifically, but he was talking a lot about, really good book, by the way, but he was talking about, you know, when you're forming like your teams and basically the hierarchy within your organization, and you're making decisions within the organization, he talks a lot about how to go through and think about your second order consequences as well. It's really, man, it's a hell of a book. He really breaks down like all kinds of different aspects of putting together a strong functioning company or organization. It's a really interesting book for sure. But yeah, he talks a lot about second order consequences. Because as soon as you said that, I knew it sounded familiar. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because I just finished with his audiobook.
Nice. I've never read that book.
Yeah, I just got it. Like, I've heard a lot of people like that we listen to, like, you know, Brian Tracy and all kinds of different guys have always talked about that book, and I just never got around to doing it. And then yeah, I just finished it, and then he just came out with another one. Because the first book, Principles, was basically like his life and work principles. Mm-hmm. And then this book is like economic principles.
But didn't you have like a third one after that? Or it was just the two?
I think it's just the two that I know of. Mm-hmm. And I know in Principles, in the beginning when he's talking about himself and why he wrote the book and all that kind of thing, I'm pretty sure he says that he's only going to write the two books.
Okay. Yeah, I do remember it because I did read like the life portion of principles.
Gotcha.
And then I think
Yeah.
I was like, I don't give a fuck about the
Yeah, no, and it's funny because even he says in the audiobook, he's like, yeah, you could skip this part.
Yeah.
He's like, this is the one part that I listened to it the first time, but so it's funny because it's one of those books where, you know, sometimes I listen to certain audiobooks and then I know that I'm gonna want to read this and like be able to highlight stuff and stuff like that, and so that was one of those books. And you know, the first time through when I'm listening to it for the very first time, you know, I listened to the stuff about his life just because I like to know the background of the person that I'm learning from, like, you know, just to you know, but beyond that, like, so now when I do go back to reread it at some point, I'll skip that part, right? Because
exactly.
it doesn't have any actual actionable information, right? Other than just, you know, it's an impressive story. Yeah. And I do like stories, man. Like I said, like those, you know, sometimes I just like knowing what these guys have done, right? Because, you know, it kind of creates in your mind too, like, it turns the gears in your mind as to like what is possible. You know what I mean? And it might not be something like tangible and actionable, but just knowing that people have done things like that is interesting sometimes, you know?
Yeah.
But
it helps you, like, yeah, that's why I think it's important to have like a good set of people around you, because it's like you don't know what you can
that's
do.
Right.
What you can do if you don't have people who are like, no, you can do this, you know, like.
Yeah, and if all you've got is that one person, like whether it's a spouse or, you know, like I find, you know, being married myself, like, one thing I find with that style of relationship is, a lot of times you have one partner who is a little bit more maybe of the dreamer, the, you know, the futurist kind of thing, and then you've got the other one that's a little bit more, well, how are we gonna do that? Or, you know, and don't get me wrong, there's value in that, right? Because you need that balance, right? Like, you don't want to go too far off with the dreaming and not be somewhat grounded in reality, but then you also want to know what's possible, right? Like, there's always something possible beyond what we're currently doing, right? But even though that's a good thing and you need that balance, if that's like the only person that you interact with every day, you could find yourself also getting sucked into that mentality, right? Where, so yeah, you need both people around you. You need people that are going to keep you grounded, but you also need people that are like, oh man, you could do more. Like, you know, who says this has to be the limit, right? Like, you know, so yeah, you definitely, but you need both of those, because, you know, I see some people who just, they think they can do all this different stuff, and I'm sure they could if they actually applied themselves, but they just spend so much time like in that side of things, and they never really get down to
like in dreamland, like thinking
they never get into execution mode. They never get into what I would call reality mode, where reality mode is not telling somebody that they can't do something, right? Like, that's kind of the fallacy, like, where people think reality is this super negative term where you're just telling people they can't do something. That's, to me anyways, that's not what it is. To me, reality is like, okay, that's cool, you want to do this, but this is what it's gonna take, right? Like, this is gonna be the cost for what you want to do, and if you're willing to pay that cost, then you could probably do the thing that you want to do. But you have to be aware of that cost, right?
I was actually just reading the Miracle of Self-Discipline or whatever by Brian Tracy, and he says it's like, like, find out what I'm sure you probably know it better than me, but it's like, number one is something, number two is figure out what the cost is of what you're going to do, and then number three is like pay that cost.
That's right.
It's like, figure out what it is that you want to do. Is step one. Step two is figure out the cost associated with that. So like, if you're trying to hit a goal, it's like, how much time are you gonna have to put in? Like, what are you gonna have to do, like, to get to a certain point, you know? And then step three is say, I'm gonna fucking do this, you know?
That's right,
get
man.
to work.
You know, you look at, you know, I'm watching The Last Dance again for,
I was actually gonna ask you, I was like,
the 30th.
I feel like you have seen The Last Dance
way too. I've probably seen it too much. I'm probably at the point now where it's not really providing any value because I can basically recite it. But nonetheless, it just keeps me in that mind state, right? Yeah. I just find it keeps me in that hungry mind state sometimes. And, but, that's a perfect example, right? Like, Michael Jordan had to pay that cost of basically having his teammates think he's a fucking asshole, right? And having all that attention from the media that I would never want to deal with all that attention, right? Like, so it's just for him to live the life that he wanted and to be the champion that he wanted to be. Like, there was going to be certain costs associated with that where he wasn't going to be able to live a normal life. He wasn't going to be able to be the friendly teammate that everybody loves and who they see as this great team player. One of the things that struck me about that was about that documentary specifically was at the end, like in real time as the documentary's happening, now the guys are saying, well, yeah, when you look back on it, the guy was a great teammate. But basically, like, when we were playing with him, we fucking hated him, is basically what they're saying, right? And that was always pretty interesting to me. It was just, but again, and Michael Jordan says that in the documentary, that's basically the exact quote, is he says that's the cost of leadership, that's the cost of winning something, is, I had to take it to that level where that's who I had to be to get the job done, right?
It's interesting too because it doesn't seem like he was very self-motivated to do that, like it's kind of like no one would have pushed him to do that, but there was like a thing in his brain that made him so that he's like, no, like we're like there's just, it's weird to have, and this is something I look at because I don't have this and I want it, but like I see it, I read about Goggins, I read about Michael Jordan, I watched fucking The Last Dance, and I'm just like, damn, he has this thing but that I don't have, and I want to have that, but it's like a weird thing where there is no stop. It's like we're going like I don't know, like
I struggle with it, man, because some days I feel like I do want it. I definitely wish I had that sometimes, and then other days it's like, I'm okay not having that, just because, fuck, man, I don't know. To me, that couldn't have been the most enjoyable lifestyle.
Yeah, exactly.
Like we're talking about this guy had like one moment of, glory when he won a ring, right? Like, that in a lot of ways probably didn't last all that long, at least not at that time. Like maybe
like he says in Relentless, it's like done next,
done next, like, man, done next. And I don't know, like it's tough. Like there are some days where I definitely wish that I had that, and then there's other days where it's like, no, I feel like I'm a happier person because I'm not like that.
But even like on the one hand, so Kobe worked harder than Michael Jordan. Yeah. So Kobe would just sit there in the fucking thing till like 3 a.m, just shooting baskets, and it's like, how do you even like have it in your brain that it's like, this is beneficial for me? Because it's like, like I don't know, maybe I'm making these like excuses, but I'm like, like shouldn't like a full night of rest be like, a full night of rest seems to be more important than most things for me, it's like you operate better when you have like 8 hours of sleep and proper diet, nutrition. But then like Kobe, who like shoots hoops, which he has done for 15 years every single day, he just still does this every night, and he's like, is this like, in terms of like 80-20 principle, I guess they're not trying to hit it, but it's like, is this the most high leverage activity you can do,
right? And
like, are you even searching for that, or are you just shooting fucking hoops and doing the shit? So it's kind of like not only is it hard to figure out like, if like, hard to motivate yourself, but like to also like motivate yourself, but also know that this is the thing that I need to do to get better. It's kind of like tough.
And I mean, it's tough, and I think part of me wants to say that it's probably like an apples and oranges comparison, because what we're talking about, like when we talk about like guys like you and I, like, we're pretty good at what we do, or I would consider myself at least on the road to being successful. Whether I've fully attained that, I don't know. It depends on the day, I guess, if you ask me. But I'm not I'm not Kobe Bryant successful. I'm not Michael Jordan successful, and I'm never going to be. Because when it comes, like, when you're talking about Kobe in the gym at 3:00, you're talking about the guy who is already the best at what he does.
Yeah.
Trying to get like 0.1% better. Where if you talk about someone like me, you're talking about somebody who wants to be the best at what he does, right? So it's just, I think so. And don't get me wrong, with my outlook and the way that there's an incredible amount of drive that is wrapped up in that. Like, I told myself years ago, like, I want to be the best in this, like, geographical area at what I do. Like, that's my goal. Like, I want to be, when they talk about, you know, who is the guy to go to, you know, for the work, I want to be the first name in that work. That's just the drive that I have. But Kobe was kind of like already there, right?
Yeah.
And he's just trying to tweak it, right? So, like, I agree with what you're saying about, like, for me, yeah, you know, 8 hours of rest, definitely more beneficial, because, you know, I'm operating, I have all my faculties that way, right? But I don't know, if I'm in a situation where I'm already the best and I am trying to tweak it, what is going to be the difference maker? I don't even know. Like, it's such a, like, you're talking about such a one-of-one scenario that it's hard to even fathom what the answer would be, right?
Yeah, because it's like anyone could sleep 8 hours, but it's like, is anyone going to stay up till 3 a.m. shooting hoops by themselves? You know, right? So it's kind of it's tough.
It's real tough, man, because it's just I just think you're talking about when you get to guys like that, you know, MJ, Kobe, you know, Tom Brady. And there's obviously examples outside of sports as well, but I just find sports to usually be the most, like, universally recognizable. But when you're talking about guys at that level, I don't know. I just think you're talking about almost a whole new set of rules. You know what I mean? So. Like, it's just a whole different level of success. Like to me. Honestly, like, you know, and I know, you know, somebody like Michael Jordan would not think very highly of this opinion, but, like, to me, if I'm a basketball player, making it to the NBA, it's pretty successful. You know what I mean? Like, as far as basketball goes, right? Where to those guys, that was nothing. Like, that was just, like, making the league was nothing. Those guys were all what's done now that I'm in the league. That's the barometer, right?
It's like they're not just happy to show up, and a lot of people, they are, like, it depends on what your drive is for it, right? So, like, a lot of people there, I just need to be able to pay for it. Like, they come from very poor backgrounds, and I want to be able to pay for my family to whatever. You make it to the league, you now have $1 million at least. Done. You know, and it's like, do I care about anything else? You know, it's like, I just gotta, like, I retired my mom, like we were talking about. It's like, she's good now.
So, I mean, when it really comes down to it, when it comes to, like, the mindset of guys like that, I just kind of look at it like, I don't get it, to be honest. I don't think I ever will, but I respect it. You know what I mean? How could you not, right? Like, how could you not respect somebody that's willing to go to that level of effort, you know? I don't know. And
there's one thing as well, like, I thought was pretty interesting. So we, you know, like, I watched Fight Club, and that kind of took my, you know, it's like, that really shaped who I am as a person. Just by Fight Club. And I got lucky too, because I was like 8 years old or something, or like whatever, like, when I watched that movie. So I was a young kid,
right?
So then, like, when he's talking about this material obsession and shit like that, like, I never got to have that because I watched that movie early, right? So I based my personality around, like, I don't need a lot of stuff, like, you know, like, kind of minimalist, a little bit chaotic as well, my life. And probably a lot of it is just due to Fight Club, you know? But I thought it was interesting as well that, like, one of the things it seems that you picked up was you got into E.T. very early, like Eric Thomas, and you watched a couple of things like that, and you actually, like, you didn't even just like watch it as a way of like getting motivated at all, you like actually implemented that as like a philosophy for like your whole life.
Yeah, I definitely did. Yeah, because and I mean, David Goggins says best, like, motivation is, at the end of the day, is fucking bullshit. Like, it's not bullshit, like, it is necessary, but it's super, super limited, man. Like, motivation is basically like, I don't want to get up and go to the gym, let me do that, right? That's like, it's, but when it comes to, like, E.T., yeah, I really bought into... Now, I don't buy into every little thing, right? Like, his whole waking up at 3 a.m, fuck that. Like, you know what I mean? I'm not doing that. I'm going to sleep till, 5 o'clock. Maybe hopefully get my 8 hours if I can. I'm not buying into every little thing that he says, but the vast majority of the thing with him was I bought into his philosophy. Like, I was originally hooked by, like, the motivational angle, but that's all it was a hook, right? Like, once I got past that, I just started listening to basically everything the guy put out, and it was just like, no, like, I really, really ride with this philosophy, and that's why I kind of over time never stopped listening to him, right? It's not because, from a motivational standpoint or whatever, I definitely don't need that message anymore. It's been many years since I have needed any type of motivation like that, but it's just the philosophy, right? Like, it really resonated with me a lot of it too is due to I was never homeless, but I came up in a very humble humble beginnings, as they say, right? Like, just a lot of what he said on that level I related to as well, right? Like, it's not the full out being homeless thing, but just I grew up in an environment where what he's talking about, I can almost like see it in my head. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because of having a very similar upbringing, and it just, I don't know, it just resonated with me. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. Like, how you were able to take that, like, you're able to take all that stuff that he was saying about just working, like, doing your best, blah, blah, like, and just kind of turning it into you, which I thought was really good, and it showed, like, you immediately got better at your job, you immediately got promoted, well, not immediately, but like, you put in the work, and then it kind of like, you got promoted, you went from like the low entry level in the company to being like the most valuable of the entry level to getting up. Now you're like getting like paid well for what you do, it's like, it's really good like that, and I liked and
I do credit, I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it if I never heard E.T. I'm never gonna say that, but I do credit him and what he talks about. I credit that a lot for forming. It was foundational. That's what it was. It was foundational, right? I just came across it. It would have been the only regret, if anything, is it would have been nice if I maybe even came across that even a little bit earlier. Yeah. But it's just, just because when I first encountered that information, it took a lot to undo what I had learned up to that point. And I don't regret that or anything like that. That's not negative, but it's just, if I had encountered that a little bit earlier and just woven that into my mindset a little bit earlier in life, it just would have been a little bit better. But either way, it doesn't really matter, because the result's the same. It just took a little bit longer. That's all. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's actually one of the cool things about, like, so I've never really, in terms of work, had that, like, kind of work ethic thing. Right. Like, I do have periods where there's shit going on, and then I'll just, like, sit there and grind it out, and I like that. Yeah. But, like, when I'm kind of not sure on what I'm supposed to do, I kind of just fuck around and, like, just go for, like, thought walks and stuff. Yeah. But one thing I've always had it with is, like, fitness and everything like that. So, like, it's, like, no matter how I feel, like, I'm going to the gym, and I'm doing my best when I'm at the gym. Yeah. And I've been thinking about this, like, this is one of the things I want to focus on in 2022, is actually thinking about, like, just doing your best just for the sake of doing the best that you can, like, like, there's no worries about outcome or anything like that. Like, that's kind of what I think is sort of the new thing. It's just like it's a form of presence. It's a form of like meditation. Is to just while you're working, just be working.
Just be working, man.
And like try that as much as you can. And then like my boy Fergal, he talks about this a lot about like David Goggins being like semi-enlightened in a way. And 100%. I think there's something to it because like as you're suffering through, like working out is an easy example, like we were talking about like with sports and shit like that, it's an easy example. But like I find when you're sitting there at work and it's just like, oh my god, I'm so fucking bored right now, you know, or like I'm just can't figure this out, and you go away from it versus sitting in it. Like when you sit in it, you're actually like pushing yourself to a thing. I can't do this any longer.
Yeah.
But then you just like break it down to the present moment. It's like I'm just sitting at a desk. Like I can do this. You know, I can sit at this desk and that's it. I find like if you just take it like step by step by step, like second by second, then you're kind of forcing yourself into the present moment. You know? And so it's like kind of a way to get low key enlightened. You know. Yeah.
I can't say I ever really thought about it that way, but I agree though. Yeah, man. There's I think we miss a lot by not being in the moment. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like a lot. And I mean, you when it comes to the meditation and stuff, you're way more into that than I am. Although I'm in my own way, I try to get into it. It's just, man, it's fucking tough. It really is hard to get into that. But I totally understand the value, and I'm always trying to work on that. But yeah, man, just show up to whatever it is that you're doing at that time and just do the best that you can at that thing at that time. Like, yeah, a lot of times that's true, man. We get caught up in and that's why like goals are a funny thing, because they can, depending on how you approach them, they can be a double-edged sword, right? Because you are creating this like vision, and depending on how ambitious you are in your goal setting, you could be setting up a vision that isn't for like years in the future, right? And sometimes when you're grinding away and you feel like you're not really getting anywhere near that, it's easy to get discouraged. It's easy to it's just easy to just lose, and that's why The Slight Edge is such an important book, because that's the whole thing is, man, just focus on what you're doing right now and do it every fucking day. You know, like what I'm doing with the gym right now. Like, man, like my ultimate goal, like I want to lose 150 pounds, but when I look at myself now, like it seems like a daunting task, right? Like 150 pounds, it seems impossible, right? I know it's not impossible because people have done it and you see the success stories and this and that, but I find when you look at things through that huge scope, it can just be, I can only speak for myself here, but I know that's where I failed in the past, is I focused too much on, the scale, and then, when I didn't lose my 2 pounds this week that I'm supposed to lose because of my calorie deficit, I just kind of shut down for a brief period of time until I get it back up and rolling again, right? So right now it's just, the focus is just like, man, get to the gym every fucking day, even if you're not feeling it and you only do fucking 5 minutes, you know what I mean? What I like, don't get me wrong, like I want to go for that, legendary workout every time, but we all know that there's going to be days that you're not feeling it, right? But just get there, just do what and then over time, those workouts, we all know, the more often you go to the gym, those workouts are going to get better and better. They have to, right? Like, but you're definitely not, those workouts definitely aren't going to get any better if you're not going to the gym. Exactly.
It's like the other day you sent me that picture of you went like 1 kilometer, you did like a 1 kilometer
just
walk
a light one,
and it's like, that's good. That's all we need.
It's 1 kilometer that at certain points in my life, it's 1 kilometer that I might not have done it over a course of like 2 or 3 weeks, right?
Exactly. Even actually just bring it all back to the Alchemist. At one point when he's leaving the glass shop and he's like, all right, now I'm gonna go to the pyramids. Yeah. He's like, well, looks like he's like, Andalusia is 2 hours that way, I'm only 2 hours away from Andalusia. After a year of like losing all of his money and then working in this glass shop.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm 2 hours closer to the pyramids, you know? It's like, that's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you just got in that 1 kilometer walk. It's like, I'm 1 kilometer, like, that's it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's yeah, man, it's tough. You know, when you got a big goal, it doesn't have to be weight loss. It could be anything. But like when you got a really big goal, I find the mental management of everything is kind of the hardest part of it, to be honest. Like, you know, managing your own like mental state as you strive for this thing. And I know when it comes to me, because this isn't the first time I've wanted to lose weight. Like there's been a bunch of times, you know, and the biggest challenge has always been, it's not that I can't go to the gym. That's never the challenge. The challenge is the mental getting there, right? Like, you know, and then consistently getting there, and then realizing that, you know, there's value in, you know, those days when you don't want to go and you go, and maybe you don't have the best workout and it's not like you're going to see any results from that day. But the value that those types of days have is immense.
It's kind of like in Atomic Habits, they talk about you have Atomic Habits in your Audible?
Yeah. No, not Audible. No,
okay, because I was like, I need to listen to that.
Yeah, no, I don't have it on Audible.
But yeah, like in that book, they talk about like the changing the identity aspect, and that's something that I'm really like looking deeper into at the moment, of like changing identity. And it's like, if you go when you don't want to go, it kind of just turns you into the person who does the things that need to be done, you know? And it's like, that person is eventually going to hit their weight loss goal. That person's eventually going to do whatever. And I noticed like, so I started doing jiu-jitsu 7 months ago. I wake up at 6 a.m. to go to jiu-jitsu. Before that, I was waking up at like 9:30, right?
Right.
And I would hit my snooze. And I would just like, I don't even know when I started work. Like, I don't fucking know. Like, I had no schedule. And this, like, I started going mostly just to get, like, some semblance of a routine in my life, you know?
Yep.
And so I started doing these jiu-jitsus at 6 a.m. And then the other day, like, now I don't have jiu-jitsu until, like, 12:30 here in Canada because, like, it's a different gym. But I noticed, like, my alarm went off at 8 or something. And I, like, woke up. And then I like went back to bed, and then like I had this thing in my brain, like, what are you doing? And I was like, I just hit snooze. And it's like, we don't do that.
Yeah.
And I was like, but it's like, no, we don't do that. And I was like, fuck. And it's like, just after a certain amount of time, like that now, like I used to hit the snooze all day. And now I just don't have that in me anymore. Like I honestly can't. And like,
that's awesome.
Even though at 6 a.m. when my fucking alarm goes off every day, like internally I'm just sitting there like, no.
Yeah. Fucks it, son.
But I have a scheduled thing at 7 that I have to hit, you know? So like I have to wake up, I have to meditate, then I have to like get my shit done and like hop on my bike and drive to the fucking gym.
Yeah.
And there's no avoiding it because I'm just gonna go.
Yeah.
But I don't have to go. You know, it's like it's a weird thing. Like no one's making me go.
No.
But I'm going to go. Yeah. And then it's just like it's been weird seeing that happen because like I literally never want to go.
Yeah.
Not once. Do I want to wake up at 6 a.m. and go to the gym?
Yeah, no.
You know, I don't want to. But then when you're there, you enjoy it and you get out and you're like, fuck, that was sweet. But yeah, it's been an interesting thing watching that, like, that snooze aspect of my life that has been a big part of my life. Like, I've always just hit the snooze button and, like, you know, get another quick 9-minute rest in. And I've always had this, but then it's just gone now after just, like, a couple, like, you know, even though I don't need it.
Yeah.
You know? So it's a weird, it's just sort of like a weird realization that I'm seeing. It's like that part of me has now died, you know, like the hit the snooze button, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting, man. Yeah, because that's I mean, ultimately, like I said, you know, I got this, you know, weight loss goal for myself, but at the end of the day, that's not really the goal. Like, the goal is to become a person who weighs this much, and everything that goes with that,
and the gym,
the healthy lifestyle, and all that stuff, right? Like, it's, you know, the number is just, really the number is nothing more than like a measurement, like a thing to measure, like a thing to track, right? But that's not really the goal. Like the goal is to become the person that weighs that amount.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, versus the person who weighs the amount that I currently do, right? So that's what it comes down to, and that's an interesting way of framing it. Is what did you call it? Identity.
Yeah, identity level change. You know, and it's like.
Yeah, I like James Clear, man. I love Atomic Habits, but I also follow him on Instagram, and a lot of the shit he posts, although a lot of it is just like spin-offs of Atomic Habits, but because he's got his blog and shit like that, he's got some other information in there too, and it's just but I like James Clear. I follow a lot of his shit.
Yeah, I'm a big James Clear fan as well now. Yeah. I don't really got more to say, but
that's about it, man. Atomic Habits is one of the best one. Like I've read a lot of good books over the years, but that's probably one of the ones that was the most instantly valuable. You know what I mean? Like I was reading it and I was like, oh fuck, I can use this like right now.
Fun fact about that, actually, my ex-girlfriend texted me the other day.
Okay.
I haven't spoken to her since January 1st, 2020.
Okay.
And she hated me, you know. She's like, bro, like, I hope you die. Like, why are we on the phone right now? I was like, oh, this girl's mean to me, you know. But she was like, the other day I was just like driving home, and I got a text from her after 2 years, and it said, have you read Atomic Habits? I was like, yeah, like, do you want my summaries from YouTube on it? She's like, yeah, sure, like, I love it, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, like, I figured you had read it. Everyone else I've talked to hasn't read it, but it's a fantastic book, blah, blah, blah. Like, I love it so much. And I was like, okay, like, you want to give me a summary of it? And she, like, gave me this big summary, and I was like, did you text me after 2 years to talk about Atomic Habits? And she legitimately did text me after 2 years. Like, there was no any other thing. Like, she just wanted to talk to me about Atomic Habits.
That's funny,
and I was
man. That's how desperate she was to talk to
someone who's read this fucking book, you know. And I was like, fuck, like, I love that book too. So like, and it's always good to get other people's perspective on that book in specific. But yeah, I'd say that's like one of the most useful books you can read. Yeah, that Slight Edge as well is
I put those like in the same category. Like whenever I do, it's funny because whenever I do decide to reread them, I always read them back to back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I gotta get I'll read Slight Edge again.
I like to start the year with those two books. You know what I mean? Like just the
Compound Effect too.
You know what? I haven't read that one as often, but I do love that book though. Yeah, that's definitely up there as well.
Yeah, it's weird. There's these books they just all say the same thing, but it's like I'm gonna read them all over and over again. You know? It's kind of like you gotta remind yourself.
Yeah, it's like, and it's almost like yeah, it's. I guess that's the. I guess that's just the how you retain it, right? You know what I mean? Because I don't know about you, like, I'm not very good at reading something once and having a really sound. Like, I'm not really good at reading something once and then being able to like really like that. That was one of the things that always impressed me with your summaries, because I would always ask myself, like, I don't know if I could do that. Like, and I'm not talking about like the artistic stuff, like with the animation, but I just mean like, I don't know if I could read something and summarize it that succinctly. I don't know. Like, I find for me to retain things properly, I have to read them like multiple times. Yeah. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that, but so basically when I read something the first time, I'm basically just deciding whether this is something that I'm actually gonna really use in my life. And I'll read it cover to cover, but a lot of things it'll just be the first read and that's it, right? And then if I decide like, no, this is something that I really need to like sit with and learn from this, you know, then I'll read it over and over, you know, just to let it take hold. And you know, sometimes I do the highlighting thing and stuff like that, but not very often. Usually I just read it over and over and just kind of.
Well, it's like Bruce Lee says, like, I don't fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks one time. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And that's why it's like beneficial to find like a certain set of books that you're like, all right, this is who I want to, these are the virtues that I want to live by as a person. And then you just kind of read them on repeat, and like, because you forget, you know, like War of Art, every time I read War of Art, I'm so productive.
Yeah. That is,
and then I
great
stop,
book too,
and then the
yeah.
fucking War of Art ends pretty quick because it's a short book.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, fuck my little creative endeavor that I'm gonna do. Like, I'm not gonna do this today. And then it's like, oh, like, well, let me read War of Art again. It's like, fuck,
it is a fantastic book.
It's kind of annoying that, like, as human beings, we're like that, you know? Like,
yeah, it's like you need a.
Makes sense. You know who wasn't? Is Theodore Roosevelt. You dip into the Theodore Roosevelt.
No, I haven't yet. It's on my list. Yet? No, it's on my list. I gotta listen to that, but no, I haven't gotten around to it yet.
Yeah, that guy was like a nerd.
Yeah.
Read a book every day. Every day. And then would be able to verbatim tell you that book like months down the road. And it's like, fuck, bro.
That's something,
like,
man.
You know, and it's like spending your whole life reading one book a day and being able to remember everything, take the lessons to every single thing you do. And he was like just a gigantic nerd.
Yeah.
And then from there, after being a gigantic nerd, he fucking like, I don't know what happened, but he went ranching in like his mid-20s or something like that, and he went through his second puberty. And then he turned into this fucking barrel-chested monster too, like with this fucking thick neck, and he's just like super strong, like just a man's man.
Yeah.
But he has this brain of like this nerd who can just retain every single thing, and then after that, everyone's like, yeah, that's the most incredible man on earth, you know? But yeah, it was an interesting...
I know he did a bunch of wild shit, like just, you know... Like, didn't he have, like, boxing matches and shit? Like,
yeah,
that was the same
boxing
guy,
match. Like, he went hunting bears and shit, and then, like, he fucking, he was, everything he did just seemed to be... Some of these people, you know, did you read the Abraham Lincoln book in my Audible?
Yeah.
So, like, there's a weird thing where he's, like, he can hold an axe out with, like, two fingers. It's, like, some of these people are just, like, mythological creatures, you know? And, like, when they shoot fucking Abraham Lincoln, like, point-blank range, shoot him in the back of the head, and he fucking, it's, like, instant death. This fucking guy, like, lives 8 hours like that, you know? And, like, almost gets saved, but, with, like, they're like, yeah, like, any other man would have died immediately. Like, but he just, like, he just sat there.
It's almost like, you know, sometimes you wonder if there's like any like spiritual aspect to that, where it's just like, no, like this guy's supposed to be here.
Yeah,
like,
it's like this man's built different, and like same with like Winston Churchill, all those like weird things where he like kind of fully predicted his entire life.
Yeah.
You know, he's like,
that's
you know,
right,
like when he's in kindergarten, he's writing this thing out, and it's like, what do you think you're gonna do when you're growing up? He's like, I'm probably going to save Britain in a wartime tragedy. Like, the teacher, wartime crisis, I guess. He's like, he like wrote that down in kindergarten. The teacher's just like, fuck, like we just wanted to like firefighter, like accountant, lawyer, like what are you gonna do? And like 60 years later, here's this fucking guy like saving Britain from a wartime crisis, you know? And it's
I'd say, you know, it's not it's not quite the same it's not quite as on as grand of a scale, but you know, me being a baseball fan, like that was one of the things that was incredible about Derek Jeter. Like I got his biography and I read his biography, and very similar, man. Like when the guy was in like grade 4 or something, they asked him like, you know, and I was in that position, you were in that position where somebody asked you as a kid what you want to do. I would just say, like, I want to be a baseball player, right? Mm-hmm. He was like, no, I'm going to be shortstop for the New York Yankees, right? And you know, and then he would tell people, and then once he started playing baseball and stuff like that, he would tell people, like, that he's going to date Mariah Carey and stuff like that. And he just ended up doing, like, all this shit that he said, like, as, like, from, like, grade 4 to, like, 16, there was, like, a bunch of shit that he just said, like, these are things I'm going to do in my life, and they just did them. Like, it's crazy when you see shit like that, right? Like, I guess it's just like, it's just that clarity of vision, right? Because, I mean, at that age, I could have never said, like, best you would have gotten out of me would have been, like, I want to be a pitcher in the major leagues, like, you know, to say the team and all this. But some people just have that clarity of vision, right? Like, and I've heard Roosevelt's a beast, man. I just haven't got around to that one yet.
I have a whole like document actually of like my notes from like political books. I have a standard book, and I'm actually gonna break it into like philosophy books, then like business books, like self-development books, and then like fiction, maybe like the lessons that I get from all of these, or spirituality books, something like that. But I do have one that's like political books. So I have like the Malcolm X book in there,
Right.
Teddy Roosevelt, Abraham Lincoln, Winston Churchill, Rise and Fall of the Third Reich, a couple things like that. Doug Ford's book, actually. I read Doug Ford's book.
Did you?
Yeah, I'm probably the only person who fucking read that book, and yeah, that guy's a piece of shit.
Is he actually, like, after reading the book, that was your takeaway?
Oh no, my thing was like, yeah, he seems like him and his brother seem like good, well put together people, you know, like they just seem like nice dudes, kind of mostly focused on just helping other people, and they're like very neighborly, like they're good people to live with, you know.
Yeah.
The reason I say he's a piece of shit is because of what he's done to the like both him, but I don't think he's smart enough to know what's going on. I think he's kind of stupid, you know. I think Trudeau knows what's going on, and he is like gleefully doing it, you know, like he's going above and beyond to like say that people who haven't been vaccinated or anti-vaxxers are like racist, misogynists, you know. He's like going above and beyond to spread hate and like division.
it's tough, man. Like on one hand, like I'm inclined to agree with you. The only like kind of pushback I would say about that is only because I know when it comes to these political assholes, I know that like 95% of what we're hearing from them is like a speechwriter. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I don't know how, and this is another reason that I hate politics is I don't honestly know how much of that person we're seeing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, so it's like, I'm not saying you're wrong by any means. Like, you know, it could be, Trudeau could be 100%, you know, gleeful and being a dick, but it's just because there's such...
But that's the thing. It's kind of like Doug Ford and him, they're kind of pushing the same agenda. Yeah. But, like, it seems like Doug, he's pushing the agenda and he is being a scumbag piece of shit. Yeah. But, like... Trudeau's loving what he, you know, you can see that he's loving what he's doing. Yeah, I
see what you mean. Yeah, for
and
sure.
So for that reason, and he's like a bitch in general, you know. He's just like fuck this guy, you know.
No, for sure. Yeah, and
that's the thing. Actually, that was one of the things.
They have very different demeanors.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess is what. Yeah.
But then, like, the interesting thing is, like, Trump, you knew who he was, you know, and like love him or hate him, that was him, you know, like he was he was just built for like marketing and like getting headlines and shit like that. And so whether you like it or not, it's like that is authentically him. Like he's not hiding shit, which I appreciate, actually, you know, because it's like you were saying, like you can't tell what this person is, but like, you know, the only thought in Trump's head is, will this make headlines, you know?
100%,
like he has
man.
No other thing going on.
Yeah, and you know what? It's funny, because you can't fight something that you can't see either, right? And what was so great about with Trump as president too is anybody who had like a fight against something knew exactly where he stood, right? Like, it just he and because there was like that aspect of, you know, racism and whatnot as it pertained to Donald Trump, like there was a lot of he brought to the forefront a lot of issues that America is dealing with, that other people kind of kept under the surface a little bit, right? So that, I mean, that's valuable even to people who don't agree with Trump politically. That has value because he's putting it right out in the open. Like all the issues that America has, like on the world stage, like he's just bringing it all to the forefront. It was an interesting presidency, like you know, in that regard, just because there, as far as I could tell, there was no better time to be like an activist or something like that, because you could just point and say, look, like we've been telling you these are the issues. This guy's bringing it, the embodiment to your front. He's the embodiment of it, and he's bringing it right to your front door, like, you know. But it was wild, man. But yeah, no, you can't say that he wasn't authentically himself. I mean, that's he's been that way for as long. Like I've read Art of the Deal, like he's exactly, you know what I mean? Exactly. Like, he's exactly who he was as president. Like, and it's
and this like Breaking Points, the dude who did Breaking Point, Sagar, one of the main like political commentators there. He's like interviewed Trump a couple times, and they're like, "What's he like?" He's like, he's very present to the moment. Actually, like he's super present.
Oh yeah.
But like he's kind of like semi enlightened in that sense, but it's not even like it's not like an enlightened in the sense of like he did any spiritual seeking. He was just sort of born like that. He's very present to the moment. He's very
Some
there
people
with
are just
you.
like that.
Yeah, but then he's also there as like a fucking like he's just like only thinks about the media and like how that will like come out, you know. It's a weird thing. And it's like when he lost the presidency, they're like, thank you for being so gracious with your time after you like lost the election. He's like, it's called earned media. It was like it was a way for like pretty much he's saying that it's like people want to hear what I have to say so I can plug my other business ventures right now. And like now I have the most opportunity to do that. So it was it was a pretty crazy thing. And I'm kind of
it was a wild 4 years, man.
I don't even know how I feel. Like I think he's better than Biden. But then it's also like in terms of the level of derision and like anger that he was able to get out of people. Like my father hated him, you know, and I'm like, bro, like we aren't American. Like why do you even care what this guy's up to, you know?
Like his law, you know, because and people use the old, oh well, he's got the nuclear codes and fuck, give me a break, man. I don't know. I never went for that kind of argument. Like, I think he was capable of doing some damage if there were no checks and balances. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it's just there's a lot of checks and balances in that system, you know, and he definitely did some things, I'm sure, that for some groups of people were not very good, but he didn't do anything like catastrophically bad. Like,
and like I mean, it can't be that you have like a not literal, but like you pretty much have a dead person in there right now, and he's doing all right, you know. Like this guy, he can't even form a sentence, you know. It's like,
man, it makes it tough to look at them legitimately, like the United States, that is. Like, it's just, I don't know, it makes it difficult to...
well, we're watching a fall of the empire. Me and my boy Heather were talking about that. He's like, this is crazy. Like, in our lifetime, we're going to watch the fall of the greatest empire that history has ever seen.
I believe that 100%.
And then, like, we're going to watch the rise of China, and hopefully we watch the fall of China as well, too. I get fucking weirded out by China, but
we got to get them out of there, but... no, I firmly believe that, though, that, within our lifetime, the United States empire, and that's the thing too, right? And that's the thing too, is some people, and again, this is being a student of history, but like you have to be able to see the United States through the lens of empire, which is a different lens than, like, it's not just a country, you know what I mean? Like and there's a lot that goes along with being an empire. Like, these guys have military bases in, like, I can't remember the number, but most countries in the world. Mm-hmm. Like, and that's great. Like, so with that, there's always going to be a different... They're just gonna have a different swag. You know what I mean? Like, it's just they're the empire, and but it's falling apart, man. I really think it is. Yeah,
and it'll be like potentially in the next 10 years we could see it like completely collapse or something. You know, like in the last 2 years they printed 80% of their money in circulation. Like in 2020, 2021. So like they printed trillions of dollars, and that's like you can't. Like Ray Dalio. Yeah. Speaking of Ray Dalio, he would say like, "That is not the way to handle the fucking thing." So it's been a weird mess learning about like how money works and everything like that as well. But I think that'll be a topic for another day to go into, like the how does money work, because I think we should wrap this up. Yeah.